Welcome back, Flyers Nitty Gritty fans, to Getting Gritty with It with your host, Yariv, Wolok, my partner in crime, supporting new hardware, my friend Vasili. How you doing?
Doing really well, Yariv. As you guys see, I got the new mic set up, so hopefully we're coming through a lot clearer here to start off. But I'm doing well. It's an exciting time, obviously. Beginning of the hockey season, so there's just a ton of storylines to touch upon, and there's a lot of news from a Flyers perspective in terms of games, some injury news, stuff like that. Obviously, we send regards to all the Phillies fans after what happened yesterday. I mean, it's nothing you want to see when you're cheering on a team, but they still had a really great postseason. So, I mean, they can rebound. I have faith.
Yeah, 2 home losses in a row, coming in with the lead in the series. No bueno. No
It's
bueno.
tough.
Definitely a heartbreaker here in Philadelphia, but still the Eagles are rolling. They're 6-1. They're in first place. Flyers are clearly better than most people anticipate. And the Sixers do start their season, though. Most people here are bitter because of James Harden's baby attitude. Let's just say that. So he'll probably be out of town here relatively shortly. I was saying this to other people. If he pulled that on my team, I would say, don't bother showing up. We don't want you. Goodbye.
Yeah. And I
Goodbye. We'll
mean,
figure out how to trade you. No, we won't let
just
him show up. That's what I would tell my
yeah,
team.
just for context too, like Nick Nurse was the coach of the Raptors. So being in Toronto, like,
True.
I kind of saw how he would operate, and I wouldn't imagine that behavior is going to fly under a guy like Nurse. He's very into team culture and everybody kind of being present and for the team, and doesn't seem like that's the case with him. So
Yeah, and I mean it puts it in perspective with guys like D'Angelo and Hayes and and even Provorov, right? The guys who left town. Torts made a point to talk well about these guys. People talk about the locker room issues. They weren't like this. This is people always say they want hockey players to behave like basketball players. No, thank you. I like hockey players. I like the way they are.
you never want a player to think they're bigger than the team, right? That
Yes,
just
and
doesn't create a good environment. So
basketball has way too much of that. I will say the best players in the league do not do that. A majority of them do not do
yeah,
that. Your Dwayne Wades, your Kobe Bryants, your like pretty much all
Steph
of them.
Curry.
Yeah, Steph Curry. Like they have big egos that all great athletes do, but you won't publicly see this stuff. Like I'm not saying Harden represents all basketball
Yeah.
players, but the fact that there are so many of these guys, and obviously Sixers got rid of Ben Simmons in the process to get Harden, it's like, no, thank you. No, thank you. I'm good. All right, before we get started, just want to give a reminder to everybody, please like, subscribe, share our content out if you can. All humongous help. Follow us on iTunes, follow us on Spotify. All that is a humongous help to us. The comments, everything. Thank you guys so much from the bottom of our hearts. So if you guys are listening right now, remember, hit the notification bell for notifications. The episodes are coming out a little quicker now at night, so they're not coming out at midnight. The new hardware is paying off, so they're coming out pretty much within an hour of us getting done recording this, which is great. And then also shout out to our sponsor, Jim Steaks. Still not open. We'll let you know when they're open, but they should be on the precipice of an opening. They are being rebuilt right now from their fire from a while back ago. So hopefully they get open real soon and people can pick up Jim Steaks at 4th and South. Okay, let's get into our topics today. Let's get right into Flyer stuff. We got a lot to talk about. There's a lot of good stuff here to talk about. I'm super excited about everything that's happened this season, even the losses included. There's a lot of positivity to take away from this team right now. And, my first thought, right off the bat is kind of what you and I have been talking about. And shout out to Jim Jackson, who said this as well. He said it on our podcast. Vasili wasn't on that one. He couldn't make it to that one, unfortunately. But, Jim said it here. He said it in other places. Like, we said that this team is most likely a bubble playoff team. They are not a basement team. The reason they were in the basement was because of injuries, and I will discuss that when we talk about the Oilers win over the Flyers win over the Oilers. But loving what I'm seeing. This is a defense first team. Tortorella is playing to this team's advantage. Again, they have one of the best goalies in the league, and they have a very physical team that can play physical. And right now, without Frost in the lineup, and we'll talk more about that, but without Frost in the lineup, you look at the centers of Couturier, Noah Cates, Scott Lawton, and Ryan Poehling. I mean, they're playing with a defensive strategy in mind. People might not like that. It's not the flashiest, but it is their strength. They have arguably the best defensive center in the league. And then Noah Cates, who's being primed as one of the best defensive centers in the league. I mean, it is playing to their strengths, and it's really, really showing. And I have to say, for those who think that, that this streak is similar to last year, I don't see that. The Flyers didn't play this way right off the bat last year. They didn't look like this right off the bat. They kind of scathed by, just based off Carter Hart's play more than they did their own. And as we can see in these games, that is not the case. And even the loss they had to Dallas, which we'll talk about, that's a game that I would say should have won that game if it wasn't for, some things going not their way. And we'll talk about what they were. But overall, the Flyers carried the play in majority of these games outside of their loss to the Sens, where we kind of saw that as a trap game. And then, a late night loss to Vegas. This isn't a team that's going to win by skill. It's a team that's going to win by execution, physicality, taking the body, putting their body in front of the puck. And I'm loving it. And I tweeted last night and I saw likes on it. I could watch guys like Couturier and Noah Cates all day. It might not be flashy to people, but I understand, and you understand this game way too well to just look for dips and dangles in the game. We look at every little detail, and this team has been playing to the details, and that includes the young guys. And I don't know, that game against Vegas felt like a playoff game in a lot of ways. Like they were playing like it mattered. And it seems like Tortorella got them to buy in hard. Like hard, this team has bought into this culture.
Yeah, it's not even the culture too, right? It's the system as well.
Sure.
Obviously, they're executing in the system in the right way. And I mean, I think there's a stout difference between the start from this season that you're seeing and the start from last season. Like,
Yeah.
obviously, last season, they start off with a really great record, and then it kind of dips off after the first 10 games, and you see, a team that's overmatched. We're still early in the season, so there's no telling how things are going to develop. But when you just look at the way the team was playing in those victories last season versus the way that they're playing now, like it's a complete night and day difference in the sense that, okay, they were spending a ton of time in their defensive zone, allowing a ton of shots against. Whereas, so far in the first 6 games, that's not been the case. They have not been spending a lot of time in their defensive zone. They've not been allowing a ton of shots against. There's a couple interesting stats that kind of prove that point that I just wanted to mention, right? So this was actually on the broadcast, and this was brought up yesterday. So the Flyers scoring chances per game is actually second in the entire NHL, and that's 17 scoring chances per game. Vegas was actually fourth in the NHL with 11.33. So you even see the difference there. Like the Flyers are not doing it the same way that they were last season, essentially, where a lot of it was, timely goal scoring, Carter Hart standing on his head. I say that Carter Hart isn't playing a factor and playing really well, but it's actually the team being able to transition the puck up the ice quickly, not spend time in their own zone. The fact that they're spending time in the offensive zone and not defending is what's really helping them. So I have some other stats here, and this is through 5 games. So some of it's changed, but be wary. Obviously, one game in Vegas is going to change it, so it's pretty similar. But if you look at that, or if you look at it, the Flyers are 5th in slot shots at 16.2 per game, 5th in rush chances at 7.8 per game, 9th in expected goals at 3.43 per game, 12th 3.20 goals per game. And then for things for the opposite against slot shots 11.8, they're 9th. In terms of slot shots against, rush chances against, they're 4.4, and that's 4th in the league. Expected goals against, it's 2.20, and that's 1st in the league. So it's showing that they're really not allowing a lot of goals per game. And even in that Vegas game, they only allow 3 goals, which is pretty minimal compared to what Vegas has been scoring in their prior 3 games against the Flyers, or prior 3 games to facing the Flyers. Vegas had 13 goals in those 3 game spans and 5 goals a game in the past 2 games. The Flyers, they kind of shut them down significantly when you compare 5 goals to scoring 3 goals. And then Their goals against is 2.60, and that's 10th in the league. So you can obviously see that just based off the stats right now, that they're playing completely different as to the beginning of last year. So just people kind of comparing and saying, well, you saw how they started last year, it's going to totally dip. If you look at the underlying numbers and not even just the statistic, but if you're watching these games and seeing them play, you can see it's a different recipe, it's a different formula. They're not, being hemmed in their own zone for majority of the games here. They're doing the hemming. They're playing in other team zones and controlling the play. Like look at that Dallas game. It's a game that they lose, and you could maybe say that some shaky goaltending kind of puts them in that position. But realistically, they played and were the better team than the Dallas Stars, who are a cup contender in that game. And that wasn't happening, to start the season last year. They were winning these games that they frankly should have lost, most like a good majority of them based on the stats and the underlying numbers. So you can see, a stark difference. And I think it's a good sign that, it might not continue to this extent, but they're not going to lose quite nearly as much, I don't think, as they did last season as things elapse. Obviously, if the contingency here is they need to stay healthy, right?
Yeah, dude, that's a big part. And I think it's nice that you brought up all those numbers just for people to see as well in case they missed it being aired. And two key injuries that this team had. And again, you'll hear a constant anti-narrative on this podcast all the time, and people talk about how they want to see the kids and the kids, but this team really missing Risto and Stahl, that's a big loss for this team. This is, again, a team that's playing defensively, trying for perfection, which, again, no team is perfect, but, if you can limit the mistakes that you make, if you can play more physical, if you can get in front of more pucks, the reality is that young players are not as good as that as veteran players. And right now, missing Ristolainen and missing Mark Stahl, these are huge losses. And we haven't even seen, like, this team is very physical right now. And a guy like Ristolainen, I feel like a lot of people are still living in the past with this guy, but over the past 2 years, he's done a great job of being physical and playing that defensive defenseman role with a touch of offense as well. And, I just think it's a big loss. And I'm really excited to see, Stahl is like, okay, it's a loss, not a huge loss, at the NHL level on a very good team. He's a bottom pairing defenseman. On our team, he's playing in the top four right now. But if Risto was in the lineup, I mean, that's a big game changer for this team. That's a huge element missing from our top four, and a guy who would help pretty much everybody around him if he played with them. Potentially even, like I said this before, they might actually break up that top pairing. I don't know if they're going to do that now with the way they've been playing, but again, Rasmus Ristolainen, even playing with Zamula, is better than Scott Walker, because Scott Walker is kind of doing his own thing here. You can put him with a Stahl or a Sealer, right? But putting Ristolainen with Zamula, that's an interesting combination, because Zamula can maybe, he's not he's a pretty big guy, but he's not that physical. He's not that strong. He's still younger. And something I want to talk about, I'll talk about it with Travis Sanheim again. When people talk about players peaking, like, I don't think people really know what that means. That term comes from the bell curve. People want to talk about data. And how do bell curves work, right? It goes up gradually, then it peaks, and then it goes down. And if you look at a player's career, anybody who's telling you that players are fully developed at 22, 23, really at the early part of career, they're all the way at the top of their peak, and then it's just a dip down. No, it's a bell curve. It's a gradual progress up, and then it starts dipping down. And if a player is playing in the NHL, let's just say from the ages of 22 to 33, where is that peak going to be? It's going to be in the middle, not in the beginning. It's very rare that it's in the beginning, right? So a lot of these people are expecting young guys to come in there. No, veterans matter. They always have. They always will. The only thing that has changed is that age range moved to be younger by about a year, maybe two at the most. So, like, the league is getting younger marginally. Not everyone who's younger is now better than older players. And you can see it reflected in these games, how much the veterans, especially on defense, matter.
Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you look at Sanheim, just to touch on the peak of his career and things like that, like typically a defenseman in the NHL, unless you're an outlier like a Cale Makar, or something of that ilk, or even a Bowen Byram, who's just coming in and is able to kind of establish themselves and have an impact right away. Usually, a defenseman is going to peak between those, 26 to 30 age range, and that's where Sanheim falls right now. And typically there is inconsistency in a young defenseman's game, and that's what we saw with Sanheim. Like one season, he would look really good, and then like last year, he has a down year, and then he kind of bounces back. So definitely impressed with Sanheim's play. I think just something interesting to mention since we were talking about him is he actually had recorded the hardest slap shot, I believe, in the whole league. And that's pretty, crazy. I think it was at
Didn't know that.
101. Yeah, 101.49 miles per hour. And I believe Owen Tippett had the hardest shot by any forward. And this is via NHL Edge. So kind of there's like a new statistic web page that the NHL's brought forth just with like different puck tracking data that they've had. So this is pretty cool just to look at. So we'll bring you some more stats. But Tippett, yeah, had the hardest shot of any forward, and that was 99.97 miles per hour. So, it's just fun stats to bring up. And then just in terms of Stahl and Ristolainen, I mean, definitely heavy losses. And I think what it is that is such a big deal is the loss of physicality, right? If you take even with those two, the Flyers are a defense core that probably aren't the most physical right now. Just adding in, a Cam York, a Zamula, an Andre, some guys that are younger like that, right? I mean, you obviously have Nick Seeler, who's always going to play a physical game, and Sanheim looks to be playing a bit more physical now, just with the extra weight that he's added on. But
Yep.
Ristolainen and Stahl would arguably be your two top physical playing defensemen if they're in the lineup. So to lose them, it's a huge loss. Ristolainen, just for anyone who's not aware, I mean, he did have a setback in his recovery per John Tortorella. Tortorella stated that, and I quote, "We're in the process of trying to figure it out, but it didn't go in the right direction. We thought it was getting better, and now we're not sure where it's at." So just based off of that, I mean, we don't want to speculate too much, but we're thinking, and our talk just before the show here, that could be something groin related. Especially with a setback like that, and it's something that's kind of iffy, and you don't want to really test it because a groin injury can progressively get worse. Let's say if you play on it. So hopefully, I mean, the setback just means, hey, like Ristolainen is out on the road trip. Once they get back home, they'll reevaluate. But with an injury of that ilk, potentially, who really knows? So it could be something that has him out for a bit. And everybody did want the kids like Zamula and Andre to get their ice time, so they're going to get it now. It's going to kind of be a trial by fire. I think Zamula's played well to this point. There's a couple instances in the last game that, I mean, where I thought Zamula kind of was out of his element a little bit. We'll kind of touch upon that when we go through the Vegas game. But I thought Andre did look much improved from his Dallas game. Obviously, there's still things for both of them to clean up, and there's even things for Cam York to clean up. And we can talk about that play
Yes.
that to end the game. But these are young defensemen. That's what's going to come with it, right?
Yep.
When you're at the age that they are, it's similar to Sanheim and similar to Provorov and the younger defenseman that the Flyers brought in, 5-6 years ago. It's not always going to be perfect on every night. There's going to be things that you love, and there's going to be things that, hey, we can look at that and correct that. So I think for the Flyers, it's just a learning experience for those players, and being able to get them this ice time is going to be a good thing for their development long term for all three of them. So,
Yeah.
obviously, for the injuries, I mean, it's not a good thing that you have your two most physical defensemen out, no matter
And
what anybody
biggest.
says. Yeah, biggest. Yeah, no matter what anybody says about Mark Stahl, he has value in this league. You can see that from the way Florida played him in the playoffs last season in a top four role in the Stanley Cup final, right? Like, if this was a guy that was a bum, like he wouldn't have a contract at this point if he couldn't bring something of value to an NHL squad. So despite what people think, I think both of them being out here is a detriment to the Flyers, but it opens up opportunities for young guys. So there's a positive aspect to it.
Yeah, I think a lot of people want to see this team tank still, but that's never going to happen. Um,
Yeah, especially with his coaching staff too.
yeah. I mean, and even if a team is tanking, it typically is for one season, and then they want to get out of it.
Yeah. And
Look at Chicago.
the way they're playing, like why would you want to even force that as a mentality, right? Like you want to
Never.
capitalize on the strong play. So
Yeah. Funny how the Bruins never have to tank, and I remember talking to Charlie O'Connor about this in the press box where he's like, "Oh, I don't know about the Bruins," and I'm like, "I do. I expect them to be good again this year.
They're
Uh,
undefeated right now, so
they're the next man up team. That's how they play." It's like again, people get so addicted to like seeing certain names in the
yeah,
lineup
that
as if it's
that
the end all be all for being competitive. It's like maybe for a championship,
well,
but
and the
not
thing
for
is,
being competitive.
they have prospects too. I mean, this is the thing too. Like, and it's similar to Tampa when you're
Oh,
in
but
an
they weren't taken
organization.
in the top five, Vasili, so they
Yeah,
obviously
but
can't be good.
when you're in an organization like Boston, like a Tampa that has that winning culture consistently, it's much easier to develop your players, right? And we're seeing that with Boston. Like, look at Mark Poitras, who has 2 goals in his last 2 games, and he kind of came out of nowhere, was a later round pick for them. But you saw with Tampa and some of their guys that they brought in from the AHL and just plugging them into that winning culture, that mindset, they're able to do that and consistently continue to move on and be effective. So that's
Yeah.
kind of shows how winning culture can really benefit even your younger players, right?
Yeah, and that's why you need veterans, right? So they can come into the lineup and not have to be relied upon to be the man, right? Like Tampa Bay
Yeah,
can do that.
find their way exactly.
Boston can do that, right? They still have Marchand, who's their captain, right? Like,
Pasternak.
yeah, exactly. And that's where a team like the Penguins are hurting, right? Is that they kind of moved all that talent away in desperation to get all these veterans in the lineup where they really should have just done a simpler process. Um, but
Bring
that's
some
kind
young
of
guys in to play with Crosby and Malkin
right.
versus all the vets, right?
Exactly. So let's get into our first game recap and let's talk about the Flyers. And this is Flyers versus the Oilers. This was obviously a few nights ago on the 19th. But the Philadelphia Flyers beat the Edmonton Oilers 4-1. There were several stars of that game. Sean Couturier ended up with 2 assists, a +3 on the night. He didn't do that well in the faceoff dot, which is weird, but he did stop Connor McDavid from getting a single shot on net. I believe McDavid is hurt right now
He
for
is
the
out for two
Oilers.
weeks.
Yeah, he's out for a little bit, so and they're going to continue to struggle because they're a top-heavy team, and that's how not. So you don't want to build your team, even though they are getting better at that. Their depth has improved considerably since he's come into the league. But the Flyers really, really put a hurting on the Oilers, and you could hear the lack of confidence from the ESPN broadcast opening that game up. But the Flyers just really took it to task. They took that team to task pretty much the entire game. I don't really feel like the Oilers were ever really in that game. If you were listening to the broadcast, John Buccigross kept saying, "Oh, the Oilers are going to turn it on. The Oilers are going to turn it on," and they didn't. They didn't turn it on. The Flyers PK was excellent. Their power play still messy. I have thoughts about that, but overall, I mean, you could see the chemistry of the Flyers really coming together, and it really, really was effective. And I do want to say more about the ESPN thing. Let's talk about the game, and then I'll talk about the ESPN's broadcast because I was extremely disappointed with the broadcast of that specific game. And I'll talk about why. But again, the Flyers really, really brought it to them. All four lines were playing well. They played physical. Their PK was aggressive. They were aggressive in the offensive zone. They were aggressive in the defensive zone. It was difficult for Edmonton to get any real sustained pressure. They were outshot in that game, and the Flyers stopped all of Edmonton's power plays, which again were two. But they also went 0 for 4 on their power play. They did win in faceoffs. They had 19 block shots in that game. They didn't out hit the Oilers, but that's because they had the puck more often than the Oilers. And again, it's another one of those examples where people keep talking about high end talent, and how that is not a requirement for winning regular games. If you want to win a championship, yes, but we kept talking about it. This is a team that is a bubble playoff team. And you can do that without having a super offensive player that, leads the league in scoring. And again, they drafted one of those guys, maybe two of them with Cutter Gauthier and Michkov. So like that's coming already. And there's still a hole on D to some degree, but they really, really took him to task. And early signs of young players playing well. Bobby Brink had a great game. I want to dig into more Bobby Brink after we go through the games, but I thought they played really well. And even though a lot of guys didn't produce, they still had strong games.
Yeah, there was a good team game, I think, from the outset for the Flyers. I think there wasn't any point in this game where you looked at it and say, hey, the Flyers are losing the grip, they're losing control here. They pretty much controlled the game throughout for most of it. And I mean, kudos obviously to Sean Couturier, who was matched up against McDavid pretty much the whole night. I think there's a crazy stat that the goal that Edmonton did score, the Zach Hyman goal, which was assisted by McDavid, was actually the only time that Sean Couturier was not on the ice and they scored.
Yes.
So it's pretty interesting. It just shows the level of importance that a Couturier can bring when you're trying to play against these other top lines. It's not something that they had last season, even though the Flyers did play the Oilers well last year too, and that was Noah Cates on assignment there. But when you can have a guy like Couturier, who just is so good defensively and so good at controlling the flow of the play while he's out there on the ice. It's just such a benefit for you and a benefit in terms of shutting down those elite type players. And I mean, it shows, right? Because the Flyers, they outshot the Oilers 32-23. They were leading the Oilers 3-1 after the second period. And you're thinking at this point, okay, the Oilers just came off a couple losses. They're probably looking to really rebound in this third period here. And you would expect with McDavid and Draisaitl, they really turn up the heat on the Flyers, have a lot of sustained pressure, similar to probably how Vegas went about things in the game from last evening. But that was not the case in this Edmonton game. The Flyers continued to turn it on. They continued to play their game, and they outshot the Oilers in that third period 16-4. That just shows, right, that as a team, when you're in the lead like that, the mentality should not change. You got to keep your foot on the pedal. You got to keep playing what got you to this point and got you the lead. And the Flyers didn't stray away from their game plan in that game against the Oilers. And I think a main factor was just their ability to kind of not allow the Oilers to use the Oilers to use their speed and control the middle of the ice. Right, that's usually where they live, is in the middle of the ice, in the slot in your offensive zone, and they did a really good job of keeping them to the perimeter in that game. Carter Hart, even though he only faced 23 shots, still really good performance and really good saves at a 957 save percentage in that outing. And I think in terms of that one, obviously Cam Atkinson has a big 2-goal game. You see Owen Tippett make, two really nice passes to him, a spin around pass for the first goal that he's able to redirect in. And then a pass that is really smart by Tippett because he has Couturier, who's open near the blue line that he could have sprung and it would have probably been an easier entry. He decides to take a chance, go for the more creative, the harder play that is looking for a pass between two defensemen that Atkinson is kind of hanging around. And due to that, and the path getting through, Atkinson can split the defense and then makes a really nice breakaway move and is able to score a second of the game. But it just shows like the Flyers aren't afraid to make plays. They're not afraid to take their chances. And I think that's obviously something that Tortorella is looking for. And one last play I wanted to highlight was just Sean Couturier once again, just showing his defensive instincts and just how smart he can be on the penalty kill. So the Flyers are on the penalty kill at the end of the second period. At this point, it's only 2-1 Flyers. So the Oilers could really make a dent here with McDavid and Draisaitl on the power play and tie up the game. And Couturier makes a nice stick lift on McDavid, steals the puck, is able to pass to Sean Walker, and Walker skates down the ice and then rips one in blocker side against the Oilers goaltenders. So it just shows, right, how effective and how much of an impact that Couturier can make. And basically that whole play and him stripping McDavid there creates that goal that Sean Walker scores on Jack Campbell. So yeah, without Couturier in the situation, the Flyers, who knows what happens for them. And once again, just highlights, his importance and the fact that, he can shut down McDavid not only at 5-on-5, but on the power play as they go 0-for-2 the Oilers. So the Flyers that's a perfect game for them in terms of the way they want to play, the way they want to minimize, scoring opportunities for other teams' top players. I think that would be like a game that Tortorella and the staff point to and say, we want to replicate this going forward, right?
Yeah. And after the Vancouver game, it was, they were just hammering teams at that point, and they did take it in the next game. Sorry, I had a bug in my head. They did take it in the next game. But before we go into the next game, I do want to talk about this broadcast from ESPN. Holy crap. I was watching the ESPN feed. I think you were watching. Well. You were? Okay. I wasn't sure if you were watching the Sportsnet feed. Holy crap. Now, I know ESPN has gone downhill considerably over the years. I will say, we'll talk about the Vegas game, but the broadcast for the Vegas game was not a problem for me. I didn't have any issues with the Vegas game. Everything there was great. They had much better. And I know John Buccigross has been doing this for a long time. I know who he is, but holy shit. What a disrespectful, at least in that moment, he was being an asshole. Not only did he mock the city of Philadelphia for losing a baseball game, then he just continues the entire game to keep saying, "Oh, the Flyers, they're gonna," pretty much saying, "Oh, they're gonna lose this game because it's Connor McDavid and the Oilers. They're gonna lose this game," giving them almost no credit outside of several moments throughout the game. He talked about Cam York being by far the best defenseman on the Flyers, as if there's nobody else there, while Sanheim is having a phenomenal game and just bringing it to the Oilers. Just nothing. He's irrelevant. Absolutely meant nothing to him whatsoever. And I agree. York had a great game. Did you not see how Sanheim was playing? On top of that,
well, even Walker with the shorthanded goal.
Walker as well, who's also played. A lot of people talk down on him. We said that Tortorella would like him. We knew he was going to be valuable. Here you go. And then again, during the game, he's talking about trading Hart. Pretty much
how they're tanking, or how they're gonna tank.
Yeah, they're tanking, so they're gonna trade Hart, and they have a tough decision make with his contract. Again, time and place, bro. Talked about Sean Couturier being traded as he's shutting down McDavid, going, "Oh, that's gonna be a hard contract to move." Really, you really think that the guy who literally is the best? I'm gonna say the best now that Patrice Bergeron's not in the league, the best center on two-way center in the league. Again, he's not even 100%. Yeah, exactly. Yeah, like Barkov, him, Kopitar. Okay, 1% of the league, going to be difficult. Yeah. You thought that was appropriate to bring up as they're taking it to the opponent. And then I would say probably the worst part of the entire thing is in the post game. He's talking to Cam Atkinson, who is his friend, mind you, which makes it even worse, in my opinion. Cam Atkinson just had 2 goals in the game. He gets first star of the game. And John Buccigross goes to him in the second question. So you're probably getting traded, at the trade deadline. How does that make you feel? And you can see Cam Atkinson's like,
what's happening here?
I just won. We just won. And I'm first star. And you're talking to me. He's like, and he handled it well. And he was like, he was polite. And he was like, I just focus on being here. But again, read the room, dude. But what the hell was that?
Atkinson's probably thinking that situation, like, what's happening here, first off. But I mean,
it was unprofessional as shit, dude.
Yeah, it was really unprofessional.
Oh,
I mean,
I'm sorry. One more. I'll let you speak. I'm sorry to cut you off. And the other thing is, he talked about publicly Hart having a shutout, and he said the word shutout, and even his co-host, and I'm sorry, I don't remember her name. She wasn't bad during the broadcast, but she was like, "My son's a goalie. You're not supposed to say that." And he's like, "Ha ha ha, whatever." How long have you been doing this, dude? I don't know. It was unprofessional shit. His whole performance throughout the game. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, somebody who was a goalie and played net, growing up and all levels of hockey.
Wanted us to fail.
Anybody saying a shutout like that, I mean, that's just not something that you do. But whatever, that's not really a big deal to me personally. Like, it is what it is. You say what you want, but just in general, I mean, the broadcast is very unprofessional to be saying that, especially on nationally televised broadcasts as they were on ESPN. But personally, for me, like, I'm not that surprised because I've just never liked Buccigross in terms of the way he calls games. Like, he's just too over animated. He's not focusing on the game. He's saying all these weird catchphrases that nobody really gives a fuck about. So, like, for me, I was kind of just like tuning him out, which I kind of do that whenever I watch ESPN broadcasts and he is the one who's the play-by-play guy. I'm just not a fan. I never have been. There's nothing against him. I'm sure he's a real nice guy, but it's
I have nothing against him as a person.
Yeah, I just have always thought that it's been a little bit lacking. And like, if you compare what it used to be on ESPN with Gary Thorne and Bill Clement versus, Buccigross, it just does not compare.
Long time ago.
What
Yeah.
I know, a very long time ago, but just like I think there's so many more play-by-play guys that they could have on there that do a better job. Like for example, who they had working the game in Vegas last night, D did a really good job.
I forget the
Um,
name, and then it was
yeah,
Ryan Callahan who was
but they were really good. They were really good
they were
tandem. Some
excellent.
some insightful comments. So like obviously it just depends. But like I said, I've never been a fan of Buccigross, and I mean I even caught the Frozen Frenzy last night, and I like what they were doing with it. I like the idea, and I like Kevin Weeks on there. But just Buccigross and how he calls stuff, like it just turns me off. And like I was kind
Who
of just like,
mocks the
why?
team that's dominating? I've never
Yeah,
seen that before. Talk about a
it's
personal bias.
yeah, it's not the way to do it for sure. You got to be, especially on a nationally televised broadcast, you have to try to be impartial,
You
which
would
he was
think it's the
not.
Oilers broadcast.
Yeah.
That's how he's behaving. Like, oh, you're here to watch the Edmonton Oilers, not the Philadelphia Flyers. This team, even when he's going, oh, well, the Flyers went on a 3-game win streak to start last year and then went on a 10-game losing streak. Well, why did they? Why were they on a 10-game losing streak? Did they lose 80% of their lineup, especially on forward? It was like pretty
Yeah.
much all kids.
Yeah.
That doesn't matter. None of that matters. It's not even the same team you're watching right now. It's like, did you even do your homework before the game, or are you just talking out of your ass? I don't know. I was insulted by his performance. I'm not saying that he's going to be like that every time. I don't pay attention to him enough. I did put a tweet out there and it started getting likes and people were tagging him and ESPN in it. So I just removed it because that is not why I called him an asshat, and I regret doing that. It's unprofessional of me too. I was just so pissed in the moment. I was like, what is this? What is this? Like, do you want us to hate you because it's working? You know?
Maybe that's what he's going for. So
I don't know.
anyway, definitely very unprofessional.
Yeah. So anyway, let's move on to the next game. And this game was against the Dallas Stars, and this game was just awesome. Again, for the Flyers, they didn't end up getting the win. They did outshoot Dallas 40-25 in this one. They did lose in overtime 5-4. The Flyers only had one power play opportunity, also an issue. Excuse me, in the game against Vegas, but they didn't do as well in the faceoff dot again. They did have 19 hits, 16 blocks in this game, and a game where, again, you would say last season, Dallas was a top 5 team in the league last year. High powered offense, lots of talent there. And the Flyers just made it look like they didn't have it. Now, Sam Ersson played his first game of the season. Something I was worried about personally. This is why I didn't want Ersson as the backup to start the year. I thought he should have started in the minors so he got games and stayed fresh. You could have called him up at any point during the year, but allow him to play. He didn't really get to play much. And the first 2 periods, I mean, he wasn't very good. I would say the second goal from Sagan in front of the net, that one, I can let that pass. That, you got a guy in front of you. He redirects it. But really 2 of those first 3 goals, absolutely savable. He did play much better in the third period. He turned his game around. He stole a couple, I would say, at the end there. But not the Sam Ersson we know. I don't think it's a reflection of how he's going to play this year. It's a reflection of a cold goalie stepping into a game, and it looked that way. He didn't look like himself until the end of that game, where he started bringing it to. Now, again, you could say it's an excuse or whatever, but the Flyers really, really gave it to the Edmonton Oilers. And the Flyers went down 4-2 at one point, just weren't getting the saves. And then, throughout that game, I mean, they already had 1 shorthanded goal. Then they have 2 shorthanded goals on a very crucial power play for the Dallas Stars. Flyers pretty much do something I think it hasn't been done since like
1996.
1996. Thank you. So like over 20 years, over 25 years already. Just really impressive stuff from this team. We talked about it before the season started, that PK would be a strength of this team, and it damn well is. Now the power play, another story altogether. I do not like the mix. I tweeted about this as well several times. I don't like the mix that they have there on the power play. Not that I think the players don't belong in the power play, but the selection of groups. I just feel like, why do you have Brink, Atkinson, and TK all in the same unit, and then you have Farabee, Forrester, and Tippett all in the same unit? It's just like you have balance there with big shooters and passers, and you have all 3 passers on one unit and then all 3 shooters on another. And right now, the second unit looks better than the first, and that shouldn't be the case. And I also would say, even though Travis Sanheim has been the better defenseman, Cam York is the more offensively creative defenseman. Why you wouldn't try him on the top power play? A little confusing to me. Maybe that's why they have that balance, but I just want to see them change up those units. It's not that I have a huge problem with the way they're playing or the players being selected. I don't, again, I'm not going to go nuts on Rocky Thompson here. I just want to I want to see a little bit different of a mix there with that power play. But overall, the Flyers, they lost that one in overtime. I would say maybe even a mistake by Couturier, kind of misplaying the puck a little bit, getting it kind of stripped from him, and then allowing a 2-on-0 where Ursun really can't do much there. And they take the game in overtime. But it feels like that game was kind of stolen from the Flyers in the sense that they were the better team that night. They should definitely hang their heads high. They dominated Dallas. Like that score, the fact that Dallas was able to score 5 was more of a reflection of Ersson's play than it really was reflection of the team play. The very least, they should have won that game 4-3. But I think they could have won by more. I think they were clearly the better team in that game. It's a shame that they didn't win. At least they got a point out of it. But I really, really like the way the Flyers are playing. I am not going to freak out about any of the early games, wins or losses. It's a long season. But it's good that they at least got a point. But I did feel that they should have walked away with 2.
Yeah, it's encouraging. I think even what's more encouraging than the win is just like you're playing top tier teams the
Yes,
way that they are and you're dominating them, right? Like even
great
though
sign.
you do lose, Dallas is considered to be a Stanley Cup contender and you're outplaying them
So
at
is
home.
Edmonton.
Yeah, right. And like I said, you're outplaying them at home. Dallas has a quick start, obviously. Wyatt Johnson gets a goal, blocker side goal that Ursun's going to want back. And they were kind of targeting his blocker after that. But I mean, Urson is in a tough position, right? Like this is his first game of the season, but he didn't play. Or the last time he played was against Boston in the preseason in late September. It's been almost a month since he's gotten any game action as a goaltender. Like that's tough for any goalie. I don't care if you're a veteran. I don't care if you're a rookie. Personally, what I would have liked to see the Flyers do, because if you were gonna not if you're going to keep Sandstrom anyway, you're not going to play him. And
It's even
Urson's
worse.
waiver, yeah, and
When has
Urson's waiver,
Sandstrom even gotten to play?
yeah. I mean, he's not going to get to play, but I mean, Urson, what you could have done from a manager perspective, just because he's waiver exempt, you could have sent him down to the Phantoms. You could have at least split time with Cal Peterson, got some reps, and you could have brought him back for the road trip and played him against Dallas, and he
Exactly.
wouldn't he wouldn't have been rusty, right? But obviously, the Flyers want to give him a reward and start him with the big club just due to how he's played. So I don't have a problem with that. I think you're going to see more of Urson as kind of the weeks go along here, as we see the back-to-backs, things like that. Like obviously with the way Hart was playing, why wouldn't you play him at home against the Oilers in that situation against his hometown team when he's been playing so well? So I don't fault the Flyers for that. And then after those 2 goals, the Flyers really show their resiliency, and they come back and tie it up 2-2.
All said.
Travis Konechny gets 2 shorthanded goals, which is crazy. I believe he's the first Flyer to score 2 shorthanded goals in a game, I think since Simone Gagne. And I believe that was in 2008, November 13th against the Pittsburgh Penguins. So,
Awesome. My favorite
obviously
player.
a great flyer to be, compared to with that. And then the Flyers get another shorthanded goal, and that's Sean Walker's, second in a row. He had one all in the Edmonton game as well. And that was the first time they scored 3 shorthanded goals in general, since 1996. Yeah, since 1996, I believe it was a game against the Islanders that they won 6-2. So it's obviously been a while, but it happened before in franchise history, but it's not something that's going to happen very often. And for me, the big pro of the game here, and something that's positive, even though despite the losses, the Flyers were down 2-0 and down by 2 goals at multiple points in this game and never actually had the lead, but continued to outplay and continue to stick to their game. They could have easily gotten frustrated, taken like,
Relentless.
yeah, they could have
The
easily
right
gotten
word.
frustrated and changed things, but they didn't, right? They continued to play how they were. They outshot the Stars in every period, like 15-7 in the first period, 14-8 in the second period, 10-8 in the third period, right? 40-25 overall. So they stuck to their game despite being down. They didn't change anything up, and that can happen for a team sometimes when you're down You can be more panic. You can try things that you typically wouldn't. The Flyers did not let that rattle them, and that's against one of the better teams in the league. So I think that's a positive. They show the resilience. And another thing to point out that I really liked is and we'll talk about it more. And I think they even had an effect in the Vegas game as well. But that Farabee Cates Brink line, I mean, I think it's been one of their best lines, but if not their best, and they're just showing that they have a lot of chemistry and they're able to establish a force check for a sustained amount of time in the ozone. And it looks like the Flyers just have three lines right now that they can really roll on any given night, just in terms of their scoring lines. And even the fourth line can be rolled out there and do a pretty good job forechecking. So they have a good forechecking base in terms of their forward lines. Obviously, the overtime, when you outshoot a team like they did, 40-25, you want to see the Flyers capitalize and get the win there. But I mean, it's a tough situation. Joe Pavelski is one of the premier goal scorers for how many seasons at this point. So to leave him in that situation where he has the puck in alone on Urson, I mean, I was kind of expecting the goal there. But either way, for the Flyers to pull a point out on the road when they were down 2 goals at multiple points, I mean, that's a positive to take away. They played a really good game. They deserved to win that game. It was not to be, but and then one last thing before we get into the Vegas game here is that was their third game in a row where they held the team to 25 shots or less. So they held the Stars to 25 shots. They held the Oilers to 23, and they held Vancouver to 25. So
fantastic stuff. Really, really good stuff from the Flyers in those 3 games. And again, they probably should have had 3 wins in a row there. They didn't in the end. But again, with the team that came in with such low expectations,
5 out of 6 points.
I think the Flyers right now are the most underrated team in the NHL. And I think that'll change. I think it's already changing. You can see the way the broadcast talked about them in the Vegas game. I think the NHL is kind of opening up and realizing, okay, this isn't the Flyers of last season.
I just think they're being underrated in the sense, Yariv, that okay, like this team might not be, like a top tier team in the league on every single night, but they're going to be able to compete with most teams. And they're certainly not a bottom 5 team like that was projected by pretty much everybody. Like that is not a certainty at this point. I don't believe that to be true. So
yeah, absolutely. And Brian Boucher talked about this early in the season when the season was kicking off. He's like, I know this team is projected to be at the bottom, but I really don't think people are doing the work. He's kind of calling out the league. Like, you guys aren't really doing the work to look at this lineup. You're just going off of last season.
Pretty
and
much.
This is, again, I talked about it when Couturier got hurt at the beginning of last season. I said, well, there goes the playoffs. Again, adding Couturier and Atkinson for a team that doesn't have a plethora of these top-end guys, that is a humongous loss. Again, I am not coming out here and saying that this is a Stanley Cup contender, but if you want to be a playoff team, you must have a number 1 center. And obviously, Cam Atkinson is a huge part of this offense. Adding those 2 guys slots everybody else into a different place. And we're still not even playing with Frost, which, by the way, led this team in scoring at the last, I think, 56 games of the year or something like that.
Yeah.
So,
he did.
yeah. So, and we'll talk a little about Frost too. I don't think that is permanent, regardless of, the coach's feelings and all that on him. But I do believe that this team is building something special here. And when they do add, those 1 or 2 pieces that they're really missing, they're going to go from, this kind of borderline bubble team, as long as they can stay healthy, this borderline bubble team, to a team that will compete at least for the second round of the NHL playoffs, maybe even the third round. If they play the way that they are playing, they can beat anyone during the regular season. Like, you saw it. We'll talk about the Vegas game. But it's capable, the way that they play hockey, the way that they are giving the attention to detail on the things that matter most, they can surprise teams. They can catch teams. And not even that team will underrate them. I mean, you even saw, what's Vegas's coach's name? The name is
Bruce Cassidy.
Thank you, Bruce Cassidy. You saw the way that he was talking about I think it was even at the end of the first or halfway through the second. He was kind of like, he's like, they're doing all the right stuff. And like, we're not. It's
basically said we're not matching the intensity that the Flyers are playing with. And I think a lot of teams are going to find that the Flyers, they're just putting a lot of effort in. They're playing the right way. And you might catch teams off guard, especially based off their, performances last season. But I think as the year goes along, that'll change. Teams will be more prepared for the Flyers if they continue this, right?
I think so too, but again, it depends on how committed that team is to a way of playing. And
Yeah.
I'll use that example Edmonton Oilers. I mean, the Flyers beat them last year as well with a shorthanded roster, and the Oilers will never match up well against the Flyers. They're not built for playoffs. Like they're not. They had to go out and get Ekholm. They don't have guys in their lineup that lay the body out every time. They don't. That is not their style of team. Their style is to outscore the
One and
opposition.
gone. Yeah.
Yeah, and that will not win you a championship. I would not be putting money on the Oilers unless they change the way they play, and a lot of that revolves around Connor McDavid and Leon Draisaitl. If they start playing that way, then you will see that trickle to the rest of the lineup. But as long as they remain to just be a high-powered offense, again, there's a reason Vegas won. There is a very big reason Vegas won the championship. And let's get into the Vegas game because Vegas is now 7-0. It's the best start I think it's the best start in history, right? For a team that
Yeah,
just
any championship team. So even without winning last night, they went 6-0. So that was already the best start. The Oilers of I think the 1985 Oilers were 5-0. So
yeah, well, and 5-0 is impressive.
yeah, but
And
7-0 is another level for
and
sure.
again, I think Boston won 10-0 to start their season or something like that last year.
Yeah, yeah.
Something like that. So again, we're talking about a team that won the Stanley Cup, but typically, they have a long season, right? They're coming in maybe a little more tired than other
Cup
teams.
hangover.
Right. They have the cup hangover. This team does not. And they played the Flyers, especially in the second half of the team, like the team that won the Stanley Cup. But the Flyers forced them to play that way. I want to make that very clear. So the Philadelphia Flyers ended up losing this game in regulation 3-2, a game where they were leading for a good portion of it. For the first two periods of the game, they had 28 shots to Vegas's 29. They lost the faceoffs. Again, 43.5% of the faceoffs were won by the Flyers. They were 0 for 2 on the power play, but they did shut down all of Vegas's power play opportunities. They were 3 for 3 on the penalty kill. Now, one of the Flyers' power play was for like 33 seconds long, so I don't really want to count that as a full-on power play. The hits were about even. Flyers had 18, Vegas had 17, but the Flyers had 29 blocked shots, and they got in front of everything, especially for the first, I would say 70% of this game. The Flyers were just so frustrating to play against. One opportunity and done. Blocking everything in sight, getting sticks in the lanes, like all the details that are ignored by casual fans and stuff that hardcore hockey fans love. They were doing it. They didn't play a perfect game. The first goal was beautiful by Noah Cates. The second goal by Cam Atkinson was a little bit lucky, but again, I was even tweeting about it. Like, just get shots on net. Like, this is that type of game. And again, Cam Atkinson was just a backhand from a really nice pass from Owen Tippett, who's at least racking up assists right now as his scoring opportunities are going up, but still has not buried one. They were playing the right way for large portions of this game, and I was really proud of the way they played. I was upset about the third period because I felt that they were running out of gas more than they were giving up. Like, I didn't feel that they were giving up. I just felt they were running out of gas. They were the away team with the time difference. It was a really late game, and Vegas just had a little more energy. And probably were energized by the fact that they were losing. And once they got that second goal, that Cotter goal where he kind of danced around Zamula again, Vasili mentioned it earlier, right? The young defenseman kind of getting beat on a play that he probably should have stopped the guy. It was a beautiful move, but it should have been stopped. And then a goal with 30, I think it was 33 seconds left on the clock.
Yeah.
The Flyers were just kind of collapsing. I wish they didn't do that. I wish they played a little more aggressive in the offensive zone. They did have spurts of it, but they definitely didn't do enough of it, and was really only one man in at the end of the game. You could tell the Flyers were playing for overtime, and I was worried about that because I didn't want them to play for overtime. I want them to continue playing the way they were playing. Lots of redirects. And in my opinion, for the Flyers, the player of the game was Noah Cates, and then Bobby Brink second, at least on the forward line. And then Travis Sanheim played really well. York, for the most part, had a great game, but really where the Flyers kind of lost. Yeah, he had that one gaffe at the end where he got a little too cute and try to go through multiple players. And he really just kind of set himself up for failure there. An unnecessary play where if you are playing for overtime, you don't even bother making that move. You just chip that puck, get it out, let the offense chase it, let them get sticks in the way, and just keep doing that. Because you could tell the Flyers were gassed. And they were kind of, again, they played very hard and they were putting their body in front of everything. And a lot of guys were hunched over, taking shots, going through pain. But I loved it. I loved it. It's not a way you can play every night. But considering they were playing arguably the best team in the league, I'm really proud of them for the way they played. I think they can do better than what they did. I don't think that that's their ceiling. I know other people will. I think they can beat Vegas. I think having Ristolainen would have really made a difference in a game like that, and even Mark Stahl. But I'm really proud of them, man. I think they played really well. And outside of like the end of that third period, I mean, Carter Hart was. I was like joking around. I was like, yeah, you get through our tough defense, and then oops, you got to deal with Carter Hart. And it's like you could just tell at times Vegas was getting really frustrated playing against the Flyers. It was again that you use the word relentless. That is this team's identity, is relentless, and that is a great identity to have.
Yeah, they come in waves. I mean, the way I saw the game is kind of the first 10 minutes, Vegas kind of controlled a bit of the play. And then from that point, the Flyers essentially take control of the game until the third period.
The road,
And
the home team, though, right? We talked about it through text, right? The home
yeah,
team always comes
exactly.
on strong.
Yeah, exactly. So that's kind of expected. You're going to start out at home. The road team is going to be kind of backs up against the wall when that's the case. Usually the home team starting with a lot of energy. And then Vegas gets the first goal kind of due to that. And then from that point, the Flyers they really start playing their game. And what that is, not defending a ton, quick transitions up the ice, and that leads to both their goals in this game, essentially, right? Like the Noah Cates goal, it's a really quick pass up the ice by Sanheim. It gets to Cates. Farabee's driving the net. It's kind of a bit of a 2-on-1, and then Cates throws it towards Farabee, who then tips it down, and Cates is able to drive the net and corral his rebound. And then the same thing with the Atkinson goal. York makes a nice pass to tip it in the neutral zone. Tippett finds Atkinson. Atkinson's able to come into the zone. He just puts it on net, and it's never a bad play in hockey to put the puck towards the net. Doesn't matter where it's from. Sometimes a goaltender, it might be off his angle, or he might be trying to do something. It doesn't work out. Like personally, what I saw from Thompson, I mean, it's a lucky goal from Atkinson, to be honest. Like it's lucky. It's not going to go in most situations. What really happened is Thompson's trying to deflect the rebound into the corner. He fucks up and has the puck go off the inside of his blocker and basically scores on himself. And like that's a mistake. That's one you're going to have. But if you don't put the puck on the net, you're never going to know if that's going to happen, right? Like if you just rim it around the boards, that chance doesn't occur. So I don't mind that. And I think, if you're a team playing against defending Stanley Cup champs and you're trying to kind of take the lead, why not throw everything towards the net, especially with the way you've been playing the last couple of games where you're just funneling a lot of shots and things along those lines.
I don't
Sure,
want to cut you off. I didn't want to cut you off fully. I just want to comment on Thompson. He did have a strong game though, and he stopped a lot of redirects by the Flyers. So it wasn't like the Ersan game. Like Thompson did play well.
He had one mistake.
Threw a lot at him.
Yeah, he had one mistake and then he shut the door from there because the Flyers didn't score and they were controlling and dictating the play like in the second period, right? They had 12-9 shots, and there was a point in the second period, I think for 10 minutes from the 19-minute mark of the second period to the 9-minute mark, Vegas had 0 shots. So that just shows you that the Flyers were controlling the play. They were in Vegas's zone. They were playing offensive hockey. They weren't sitting back and, defending in their own zone. And then the third period, it kind of flips on a dime, right? Like Vegas is probably thinking to themselves, hey, we just got outclassed in the second period and the second half of the first period. We're the Cup champs. We're at home. Like we're gonna give our all in this third period and really ratchet up the intensity, and that's what they do, right? And they take advantage. And you could tell by the shot total, like 14-8 shot total for Vegas in the third, and that's significantly higher than their 6 and 9 shots for in the first and the second period, respectively. So it just shows that like they were playing with more urgency in their game. One thing I wanted to point out, not to pick on Zamula, but I think this is something the coaching staff will also point out and work on with him, is he's a big guy, like 6'3", 6'4". I'm not sure the exact,
6'3".
Yeah, I'm not sure the exact, but
he's Sanheim size.
Okay, so
A
he's
little
still big
thinner.
guy, big guy. Cotter scores on him and completely undresses him, and like all he has to do in that is just
The body.
body him, just take the body. And it happened earlier, and he didn't get burned for it, and that's why I was so not mad about it. But I was just like, he didn't learn from what happened. So Matt or Nicholas Waugh, who's on Vegas, he was kind of coming down the same side, and he toe dragged him big time and got right by him. And it's the same exact play. So that happened to him twice. You're gonna see that they'll likely point that out to him, and hopefully it's something he can correct. I think he will correct it. I mean, it's just obviously getting to know certain players, what their tendencies are. Like it is his first season. So you want to see a guy with that size just step up and take the body, because then those hit that if he does that, that goal doesn't happen, and then who knows if they even tie it. And obviously the York one is a tough situation. I mean, I think that's just young defensemen. York and Samuel are just learning, the league, and learning from their past mistakes, and hopefully things like that not happening as the season progresses, right? You see York, you wish he would have the wherewithal there. There's only 35, 40 seconds left. Let me just flip it up the ice and, let the team forecheck and we get a point, right? So he's trying to make a play. He thinks if he gets through those two guys, he's going to have a very clear open lane to make a nice entry or a nice zone exit pass, find a player who's streaking. Maybe the Flyers potentially end the game, right? That's what he's thinking, but go for the
Was it?
safe play in
Yeah.
that situation. And even Tortorella kind of reiterates that. And John Tortorella even said, despite them kind of choking the win there, he couldn't have asked for his team to play a better game against, the defending Cup champs.
Played hard.
They played really hard. They put everything they had out there. And there's the things that made them lose in this one. They're teachable moments.
Totally. Well
I
said.
think I think the one thing that you kind of are concerned about, at least for me, is you would want them to continue their play from the second. They kind of switched it up. Like they were playing more of a trap, like a 1-3-1. You want to have them, play the same way that they played the first
Agreed.
two periods. Keep forechecking, keep doing what you were doing that got you the lead. Similar to that Edmonton third period where they outshot them like 14-3 or something like that, like considerably. I'm not sure the exact stats. We said it earlier, but like you would want them to continue to play that way, like they
16 to
did
4.
again. Yeah,
16
you
to
want them
4.
to continue to play that way, like they did against Edmonton in that third period and play their game. And they showed they could do it right against Edmonton, so that means they could have done it against Vegas. I think maybe just there's stylistically, the coaching staff probably saw, hey, like we might not have the gas to do it,
Yeah.
so let's pull back. Let's try to get to OT. My thought is probably the team's thinking, hey, if we play run and gun right now, they're going to open us up and score anyway. So let's try to shut it down. But you just have to take the lessons away and hope that the younger players that had those mistakes kind of learn from it. And I think they will for sure.
Yeah. And I think if the Flyers could have been, this is why I talk about Risto all the time. The Flyers could have been a little more punishing in their own zone. And I think the forwards did a really good job of this.
Yeah.
The defense, again, you have 3 defensemen under 23 in your lineup. It was hard for them to be physically punishing in their own zone.
I will say Andre did play a pretty decent game in that one. I didn't really see too many egregious mistakes. I think he played better than the
They
Dallas
limited
game.
his ice time too.
Where the Dallas game, I think he had some real big turnovers. But I suspect, Andre's going to be in for the foreseeable future. I suspect if they get home and Ristolainen can come back, he'll be your odd man out. But that's what I mean, right? The physicality on those goals, who knows if that helps them, right? Like if you have a Ristolainen up against Cotter instead of Zamula, your Ristolainen is taking the body there and he's putting him on his ass. So, who knows what happens when you have different players into the lineup. But like I said, they're not mistakes that are unteachable. These are things that
didn't
these
have
younger
Patch already in the lineup. We have to make that clear too.
Well, he's on the Knights anymore.
They what?
Washington. Well, he's not on Vegas anymore.
Not Patch already. Oh my God. The other Pietrangelo, wasn't he injured?
I'm not too sure. Maybe
Let me double check.
I'd have to look it up. But
Let me double check. Yeah, he wasn't playing.
Okay, so that has an effect for them for sure.
Yeah. Sorry, I didn't mean to cut you off.
No worries.
Yeah, but overall, I think we were both really happy with the type of game that they played. It's still going to be a work in progress, but if they continue to play this style all season long, they're not going to win every game. They're not going to finish in first place. They're not going to, they're not going to outdo every top team in the league, but they can definitely hang around that bubble territory.
Be competitive.
Yeah, and they could potentially grab a wild card spot playing that way. And you never know. A lot of these guys are really young, and hopefully they'll improve as the year goes on. That tends to be how things go. We saw it happen
Well,
last year.
I think
So
especially for the young defensemen like a Zamula, like a Andre,
absolutely.
if he continues to stay in the lineup, like there's still these guys still haven't played more than 10, 15 games consecutively in the NHL. Like even Zamula, like he never got that consecutive ice time and gameplay last season. So, I think there's just a level of comfortability that they're both trying to find, and also what can I do at this league that, or what can I get away with in this league versus other leagues, or like what can't I get away with is the more
Right.
important
Yeah,
question, right?
exactly.
So like I think it's a work in progress and a learning experience for those guys. So I think as they kind of continue and get the game time and the ice time and the reps, like you'll see them improve for sure.
Yeah, 100%. So, Vasily, you have some statistics for the post game, or not post game, sorry, for after the Vegas game. So you mentioned some stats prior to the Vegas game after 5, and you have some interesting stats. You want to go through them?
Yeah, sure. Let me just pull them up here. But yeah,
Sure.
I have some interesting stats from Money Puck, and it's mainly just based on expected goals for. So what expected goals for is, it's essentially taking like your expected goals against and expected goals for and kind of dividing them in half, and then saying, okay, like when you're looking at scoring chances on the ice, high danger chances, things along those lines. How many expected goals is a team particularly usually going to have based on all those factors. So just looking at the Flyers in general, they're fifth in the league right now in expected goals for, and that's
At
54.67%.
at 5-on-5, right?
Yeah, this is 5-on-5, just to
Yep.
mention that. Typically, the stat is usually 5-on-5 based. I mean, you can have power play in there, but usually it's not as fair to the defending team.
Yep.
So typically that's why it's not tracked with power play and penalty kill. But yeah,
Sure.
so 54.67% at 5-on-5. And then
Where does that rank them? I'm sorry, you said it,
that's
but
yeah,
fifth
that's
in the
fifth.
league.
Fifth
Fifth.
in the
Right.
league, and then ahead of them is Nashville, 56.84% expected goals for. Third is the Penguins, 56.87% expected goals for. They have not started well, so that just shows sometimes the underlying numbers don't translate to the in game all
Anything.
the time.
Yeah.
Uh, but yeah, LA's second, 58.25, and then you have Colorado at first, 58.34. So you have two teams there that are actually playing pretty well right now,
Hmm.
Colorado and the Kings at first and second. But Flyers to be even in the top 10 and something like that, where I believe they were one of the worst teams in expected goals for last season. I mean,
Yeah.
considerable improvement, obviously, to start off here. And then the more interesting is actually Money Puck has a cool area of their website where they look at the stats for specific lines, and the lines have to at least play a minimum of 30 minutes together. So it's not just like, oh, this line got put together for 2 minutes. Look at them. They're sick. They scored a goal in that 2 minutes or something. So like at least there's some sort of time together that you have to take into account here. So yeah, for the Flyers, they have one of the top 5 leagues or top 5 lines in the league for expected goals for. That's Farabee, Cates, and Brink. So that's a 72.2% expected goals for percentage there. And then they have another line that's in the top 20. So that's Atkinson, Couturier, and Tippett. And they're ranked 13th in the league, and that's 66.7% expected goals for rating. And then after that, there's a couple more I want to mention that are in the top 50. So Delorier, Paling Hathaway, so PhD line, their expected goals for 60.6%. That has them 28th in the league as a line. This also considers pairings, so defensive pairings and lines. So Sanheim and York as a pairing, 59.3% expected goals for. That's 35th in the league. And then Stahl and Walker actually as well are in the top 50. And that's kind of something that you wouldn't really expect because Stahl's usually not very much of an analytics darling, but I think Walker usually is. So interesting stat for them, but they're 46th in the league. They're pairing in terms of expected goals for, and that's 57.9% there. So just looking at the underlying numbers, I mean, like stats isn't everything. These expected goals for percentages don't actually always equate to goals on the ice. But usually, what these percentages show is how much, a line or how much a team is controlling the puck, controlling the play, controlling, scoring chances, high danger chances in that game. So it shows like the Flyers overall as a team fifth, and to have those many pairings and lines in the top 50. Obviously, the team's playing really well just in terms of offensive pressure, sustaining a lot of zone time, things like that. So
And
yeah, I think
Sean Walker also played 24 and a half minutes against Vegas.
Oh,
Second
I did
most
not
on the
know that.
team.
So Sanheim's obviously first, I'm guessing, right?
25 and a half for
Yeah.
Sanheim and 22 for York.
Okay, yeah. So that's, I mean, Walker's getting leaned on for sure. I think he was used in a top four role in LA before he got hurt. And he had a knee injury and he came back and he kind of lost his spot almost on the depth chart and kind of was more of a third pair option. But he's always shown in the past that he could be a number four defenseman in terms of
And
like ceiling. So it's
well,
not surprising to see him
it's
get the ice time.
interesting. It's interesting because I want to talk about Sanheim here, but the interesting thing is when Risto comes back, like everybody is very comfortable with York and Sanheim playing together and Sanheim playing on the right hand side. I don't think that that's the reason he is successful though. And I could see, maybe Sanheim and Walker become a pairing, and then it's York and Risto at some point. Then you have Zamula on the bottom pairing with Nick Sealer, right? Because Stahl is going
Yeah.
to be out here for a while,
Or
or Andre, I guess, could be mixed
Or
in there
they
too.
could go veteran heavy. I mean, you've seen Sanheim and Ristolainen be successful before. They could
Absolutely.
put that together and then do like York
York
and
and
Walker.
and Walker, yeah, absolutely possible. Great point. But it's just interesting to think about because you just look at the type of defenseman the Flyers have right now. Walker is probably the third best puck mover as far from a veteran standpoint, right? If you want to exclude Zamula and Andre for a little bit here, it's you're kind of doubling up that top pairing. I don't know if they're going to go with that all season. So far, I do kind of expect them, especially without Bristow in the lineup. And you don't really want to put Walker on the top pairing at this point, unless you can kind of have two, kind of mixed, pairings with York and Bristow or whatever. But it's just interesting to think about. But let's talk about Travis Sanheim for a little bit because, I did have him as my breakout player of the season. We talked about earlier about, peak in their prime. And Sanheim is peaking. I mean, I will say this, like, he's not back to the form that he was. He is playing the best hockey I've ever seen from him by far. And almost every single game, like he looks like a legitimate top pairing defender right now. He does look stronger. You brought up the big heavy shot that he showed already in the season, but he just physically along the boards looks stronger. He's everywhere, everywhere.
Well,
And
he's winning a lot of board battles where previous years he'd lose those. And I think
yes,
that's the main thing.
and he's winning races, which he's always been able to skate pretty fast, and he's winning races back. He's just being that reliable defenseman that the Flyers really need him to be. It's a shame he didn't play that way when Provorov was there, but maybe this is the what he needed to push him forward. And I said this in the press room at practice. I was talking to Jordan Hall about this. I already brought this up on the podcast. I'm really happy the Flyers never made that trade for Torrey Krug. He's not as good as Sanheim. Sorry, people
No, he
might not
isn't.
like that, but Sanheim is a better defenseman. That would have been a trade we would have lost in the end. I don't think Krug would have been here, in his mid 30s playing at the top of his game. And right now we have a guy who, quite frankly, if we wanted to trade him, which I don't think we're going to with the way he's playing, especially if he
Well,
does it all year long, I mean, his value is much higher than it was when we were trying to move him.
yeah, and I think something to point out too is Darren Dreger tweeted this out. And this was a while ago, maybe a week ago or 2 weeks ago, but I just thought, based on the conversation we're having, it's important to bring it up that
Okay.
he spoke to Daniel Briere, and Briere said it was the best move they never made, is not trading Travis Sanheim. So you have the GM kind of saying that, and Dreger putting that out there. So that's telling, obviously, what they think of his early play in the
He
season and just
looks
like what he's done
fantastic.
over the offseason. I think him just putting the weight on, I mean, really has an effect. He's always been a big guy, but you can kind of see him imposing his will a lot more with his size, which he wasn't doing in the past, which he kind of arguably with how big he was, he probably should have been doing. And maybe that's something in his game that he thought that he could easily correct if he just,
He,
goes really hard
yeah,
in the training this summer. Um,
size matters in the NHL quite a bit.
one thing I would want to see from him, and I think we'll see it maybe as kind of the games progress here is, and it's something that always irked me about his game. He has a nice shot. Sometimes he has trouble getting it through the net, and you see it on the power play. And I think you definitely want to see that improve, and maybe that's why you see York eventually move up to the power play because I think does a better job of getting the
I
pucks
think
through.
he should be the number one defenseman on the power play. I still don't, and I love the way Sanheim is playing, but that's again, York is the more creative defenseman.
Yeah.
I don't
And
fully understand it.
Sanheim, the thing is, it's not that he's not creative offensively. I just believe that he's more of a weapon offensively in transition up the rush, just with his skating.
Right.
When you're standing
Exactly.
still, like on a power play, I just think York's passing acumen. There's just more creativity versus what Sanheim will do for
Yeah.
you on the quarterback position there. So
Yeah. And I again, I really don't like these groupings for the power play. I'm not picking on San. I mean, it's fine that like that's
you
actually not even
gotta
my.
have you gotta
It
have
just
Brink and Tippett together, which I don't
I
get.
don't I just don't understand why Tippett's not on the top power play unit.
I don't
I
go
don't get it.
Yeah. I don't go whether
I
I have Brink with him because they're both like Brink is showed to be probably not the most creative playmaker on the team. Like I think Couturier is a really good playmaker, but so far, I mean, as he's kind of getting the rust out of his game, I think Brink's probably been the best playmaker they've had in terms of creating consistent
but
chances so far.
but even look
Um,
at the size on like
yeah,
again, I love Atkinson. He's what, 5'10",
yeah,
five
at
nine.
best.
I love TK. He's 5'10". I love Brink. He's 5'10".
Put some more
It's like
size on that power
I just
play.
don't
Yeah,
get it. I don't understand what the thought process is there. You have an undersized top power play unit with no big shooters on it. I guess you could say Sanheim because he has a heavy shot now, but I just don't get it. I don't feel like that they're putting these combinations. There is no real
well,
top power play unless it's Couturier or
yeah.
TK's on it, or even you can make the case for Atkinson right now. But even like we were saying about Brink, Cates, and Farabee, like why are they the three of them not on the power play together? I just don't get it. I don't understand the logic
Well,
behind the power play.
they're showing the chemistry. I mean, I think definitely going to see it change up soon.
I
Like
would hope
what
so.
they only have one goal on the power play, I believe, this
Yeah.
season to date, and that's on a 5-on-3. So it's been pretty bad,
They've
which
also
is
only had two opportunities essentially. I mean, I don't want to count the
yeah.
but
But
in the
either
past two
either
games.
way, though, I mean, for example, like if you score on one of those power plays in the Dallas game or in this game, even though you want to count the one, like that could change the game for you, right? That's why special teams is such a big part of it.
Yeah.
So I mean, you see the PK being such a strength, you at least want the penalty or the power play to like get around 20th in the league. Like right now, I'm pretty sure it's last again.
It's like
Uh,
5% on the
yeah,
season.
it's definitely last then with that statistic. I think it's the worst team right now. That's something that we said to keep an eye on, right? Like you look at the special teams is going to be a big factor to kind of the success of this team. Obviously, the power play is one thing that is a concern. I think throughout all the really good play, we have to point out the one thing that could shoot them in the
Absolutely.
foot up here coming up,
It
right?
is.
Like
I would say it is shooting them in the foot right now. I would say they probably would have won some of these games if they had a competent power play.
yeah, if you can capitalize, right? You see other teams taking advantage. So I mean, you want to hope, and you have to hope that the Flyers can improve there. With it being 5%, there's really only one place to go is up. You would hope. So I mean, I think we'll probably get some new combinations, some new looks. Personally, struggling power play. Who's a guy that's supposed to be good on the power play is Morgan Frost. Maybe if he enters the lineup, that adds a spark for them in terms of creativity there and his playmaking. Maybe did you want
They
to get
went
into Frost?
I do, but I just want to point out they went 1 for 6 against the Senators, where the Senators were three
Yeah,
for five.
they were really bad. Like just for being there, if they would have at least what they lose that game 5-2.
5-2, yeah.
Yeah, if they on 1-for-6, if they at least score a couple power play goals out of the or a couple more power play goals, even go 50%, 3-for-6, like they're right in the game and it's 5-4. So you know what I
Exactly.
mean?
They're just the inability to score on the power play is hurting them. And people can say that they don't have the high end talent, and this is proof that they don't. You don't need high end talent to not be the worst power play team in the world. And not only that, they have enough
I
talent to
I
score on the power
just
play.
I just think they're not approaching it in the right way. Like, okay, first of all, they're having trouble carrying it into the zone. I mean, Owen Tippett's doing a pretty decent job at zone entries. He's really quick, as we've seen. I mean, and he's a good puck carrier, usually off the rush, even on 5-on-5. I think that's a reason to get Frost back in. That's something he's really good at, is entering the zone on the power play.
Yep.
But he's good at doing it with speed, but also kind of slowing it down with his stick handling and allowing for everybody else to get set up. Whereas Tippett is more of, okay, I'm going straight ahead, fast like a bullet and dumping it in.
It's like
And
a
you don't
Jake
really
Voracek thing.
yeah, you don't really want to dump it in on a power play. You want a guy that can bring it in with speed and then stop on a dime and slow it down like a Frost. So I think that's where you kind of would want Frost to get back in there to help with the power play. But one thing that I don't understand that they're doing is, okay, your main thing with the power play isn't your playmaking right now. Like as much of as good as a passer as Couturier can be at times, and as Frost can be if he gets into the lineup, what you need to utilize is your shooters. Like you have Tippett, who's a plus shooter. You have Forster, who's a really good shot. You have Atkinson, who's a really good shot. You know what they're not doing? Just taking a lot of shots and putting it towards the net with traffic.
Agreed.
You have those guys. Why wouldn't your thought process, instead of let's dish it around and never take a shot, let's, find guys with a quick wrist shot, just get towards the net and cause some rebounds, cause some havoc, keep it simple, especially when it's a portion of your game that's struggling so much. Usually the best thing to do is get pucks on net, get people to screen the goalie, players in front of the net, get shots towards the net, and you're going to get a lot more opportunities. You might not score, but it's at least going to be better than what you're producing now, which is essentially nothing in terms of that, both scoring chances and actually producing any goal output. So I think they need to kind of change the philosophy up. I'm interested to see how that goes in the next little bit here, obviously. But if they keep, performing at this rate, there's no doubt for me we're going to see the power play lineup kind of shift, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. And we'll go back to the other topics that I have here, and let's talk a little about Frost because you brought him up already. So I do think the option there, the one line that hasn't, at least on 5-on-5, hasn't really been producing, even though they have played well. I don't want to say they're playing poorly, is the Scott Lawton, Tyson Forrester, and Travis Konechny line. Like Konechny's points are coming on the PK, not so much 5-on-5. I think there is an opportunity there. And, look, Scott Lawton is not a fourth line player in the NHL. But of all the guys in that top unit, if anybody can play really well on a fourth line and still get ice time because he'll play a lot of PK, you can always shift him up throughout the lineup. And he's a guy who plays in all situations. You put Scott Lawton, let's say they just sit Delorier for a game, right? Because I think with Garrett Hathaway there and Ryan Poehling there, and then you throw Scott Lawton on the left-hand side there on the fourth line, that's a scoring fourth line. And all of a sudden you can really roll four lines, put potentially Morgan Frost in the middle of TK and Forrester and see if they can start producing at 5-on-5. I think that's the opportunity there to do it. Do I expect Tortorella to do it? Not really. You and I talked about it before. Probably not. Again, they like that fourth line, but he's also not playing Delorier that much. Like if I look at let me look at the game against Vegas. Let's look at Delorier's ice time. Under 10 minutes. By far the
What's the rest of the line, though? Him
and Poehling and Hathaway played under 10 minutes. I guess Delorier had a good game against Vegas, so I'm not even putting him down. They all played actually both of the fourth liners played less than Delorier. And then against Dallas, Delorier played 7 minutes 20 seconds. Against
PK though. But I guess he does play PK sometimes.
Sure.
Probably not in this rotation.
Yeah, I mean, no, it's a good point. And then against the Oilers, Delorier played just over 10 minutes. Again, more balanced lineup overall in general. But I think that's the opportunity where, like, you can also shift Lawton, and you're like at times during the game, maybe you do bench Frost for a few times when you're trying to kill off or you're trying to protect the lead, and you move Lawton back up to play with them as a more defensive unit. I think it just gives you that option. Do I think it's going to happen? No, but they have to try to find a way to get him in. I don't think, and I guess so we'll kind of mix it in with the young guys. I mean, you look at the way Forrester has played, I don't think that you should be benching Forrester. People might just be looking at the score sheet with him. He has played very physical. Yeah, he made some mistakes and stuff. He took some penalties, but he's playing hard and physical, and he's blocking shots. He's doing everything that's being asked of him. And by the way, he can still score. He's also big and strong. It's just, I feel they're a better team with him in the lineup. And then you look at the way Bobby Brink is playing, the way he played against Vegas. I mean, he is this kid has arrived, right? Like maybe the point production isn't that high yet, but he is creative as hell. He's the other Morgan Frost right now in the lineup, right? He brings a lot of those same elements. He's been aggressive, digging in the corners. There's no reason to sit Brink. So I think they have to get a little more creative, because why not attack with all four lines? Because Scott Lawton on the fourth line with Paling and Garrett Hathaway, I mean, that's a danger. I mean, we both said it. That might be the best fourth line in the NHL. If you really look at that on paper. So, and this is a team that needs to score by committee. And if your fourth line can start scoring, which they really have not, I just think it makes them a much more dangerous team. I think that's an opportunity there. Outside of that, is it going to be Forrester who sits? Maybe, but and then you do the Lawton, Frost, TK line. I think that's also potentially good. I'm not necessarily against that. But and maybe Forrester needs to sit. He took a couple penalties and all that. That's fine, if that's what happens. But I don't think, for having Frost, who led this team in ice time, who's one of the most dynamic, fastest players on the team, it doesn't make a ton of sense to sit him for long periods of time. So I think the Flyers will try to get him back in the lineup. And I do think the optimal way of doing that is shifting Lawton down to the fourth line. I don't know if that's going to happen. But again, Lawton is still a physical guy who can fight, very similar to Paling and Hathaway, only with more offensive upside. So, I kind of look at that, and that's it, if I'm playing NHL 24, that's probably the lineup I'm putting together. Again, this is not a video game, right? It's very different, and Tortorella doesn't think that way. So we'll have to be open to it. What do you think, Vasili?
Yeah, I mean, just to touch on Frost before we dive into the other ones, just I don't think I ever expected him to be scratched for 4 games straight at this point. Like I expected him to get back in the Dallas game there, but after the team plays the way they do against Vancouver and Edmonton back to back, you just have to understand no NHL coach is going to change the
Who do you
lineup after
sit?
that. Yeah, who do you sit? But especially too when it's a team that wasn't expected to win those games really to start out, and they perform the way they do. How can you not reward that lineup as a coach, right? It kind of just goes against the meritocracy and everything that Tortorella is preaching. You play well, you're going to play, you're going to get ice time, and they played well, and they got played, and they got their ice time. At least the players that were in the lineup. I would expect now after the loss, you'll see Frost, get back in here,
Well,
just because
I want to bring this up, and I'm sorry to
yeah.
interrupt you. They are playing the Minnesota Wild on Thursday. Or I'm sorry, the day that this airs, actually. Tonight,
Yeah.
if you guys are, well, not the next day if you watch it at night, but the day of if you're watching it during the day. They're a pretty rough and tumble team. They might be, again, hesitant to put Frost in and go with a bigger lineup again. Potentially.
Yeah, maybe. I just think like you have a loss now. Like you're going to sit this guy for 5 straight games. That's just not the move to make. I think now is the perfect time to get him back in there.
I agree.
Make him feel like he's still a part of the team. Because not to say he's not a part of the team, but I doubt that his expectation was he was going to be sitting four out of the first 6 games. It's probably not something that Frost expected. I'm sure he's very disappointed, but give the guy a chance to rebound and show that he can, cement himself in the lineup, right? You gave Brink an opportunity, and then you pulled him out and put Forster in. You gave Forster's opportunity. Frost is more established than these guys, even though they've been playing well. I think he definitely deserves to get back in here, just based off his work from last season. I think that's only fair to him. I mean, we'll see what happens
He'll
here.
be very motivated.
Yeah, right. You got to hope that he's very motivated, because if he's not, he's going to be right back out. He's going to be right back out if he doesn't play a motivated game after sitting for 4. In terms of
the travel, right? So
the travel too. But I mean, in terms of who's going to come out for him, personally, I would do what you said. I think that's the best move to make. I don't think the fourth line's going to get broken up. Unfortunately, I just think Tortorella is too in love with them, and that's his kind of his style.
I think he should get over it.
Yeah, he should, but I mean, that's his style of play, and that's the type of hockey that he ultimately loves. So I think unless you see them go on any extended type of losing streak, you're not going to see that line get shaken up. So I probably would expect Forster to get taken out here. I can't see anybody else getting taken out, just due to the fact that how can you remove Brink when he's probably been the guy that's been creating the most offense for you at this point, like in terms of just actual creativity, making plays, making passes. Yeah, his passes have been really good, and he's finding guys in open lanes where a lot of other lines are not producing offense in that same manner. It's more of a forecheck first, right? And he's even
Mhm.
been hard of the forecheck too. So I just can't see them taking Brink out. I can't see them scratching anybody on the fourth line. So Forster probably is the odd man out, unfortunately for him. I think he's actually been playing pretty good despite the lack of points. Like he's been doing the little things. He's been really good on the forecheck. I thought, to be honest, in that Edmonton game, even though the Brink, Farabee, and Cates line looked really good, I thought the Lawton, Forster Konechny line was probably their best line at Edmonton
Yes.
game, just forechecking, establishing chances. Like they didn't get rewarded for the goals on 5-on-5, but you saw things coming, and you're seeing it in Forster's game too, even in the game against Dallas. Like you saw it coming around. Like he's going to get on the scoreboard here eventually. It's just a matter of when. But I mean, at this point, you have to expect Frost to get it back in at some point. So someone's got to be the odd man out, and just him being a rookie, I would expect it's probably him based on Brink's play. But
Yeah.
we'll ultimately see. There's a chance that Frost doesn't get back in because they did play well against the defending Cup champs. And Tortorella might think, well, let's see how this lineup rebounds after loss against the Cup champs, right? So who
Yeah.
really knows? But I think it is something where if you're the Flyers and a week from now Frost still isn't getting into the lineup, you're going to have to figure something out. You're either going to have to trade him or you're going to have to do something because you can't
Yeah.
just have a guy that you sign for 2.5 million for 2 years never playing, who's
Yes.
his age. Like it's just you're just devaluing your own asset because the rest of the league is thinking, well, he might be good, but why aren't you playing him if he's so good?
Yeah.
And we want him for pennies on the dollar. So they're going to have to figure it out at some point.
Especially about like he was close to a point per game player in 56 games.
Yeah, exactly.
It is a strange scenario that they find themselves in. Obviously some favoritism.
Or maybe an injury. Maybe an injury comes up and then this is all washed, right? Like who knows what's going to happen? It's
maybe
hockey,
that's what they thought would happen by now. You know, because a lot of times there are injuries. Sorry, I got a phone call here to interrupt.
no worries.
And maybe they thought that was going to happen at this point. Especially with guys blocking as many shots as they are. I don't want to see anybody injured. But they got to, something's got to give here. You can't just keep Frost benched the entire beginning of the season. He doesn't deserve that. You know, yeah, he had a couple bad games, but he didn't. There was also other guys.
And they haven't been benched one game. So, like,
Right.
you know, if it's a meritocracy and everything's fair, it's not really being fair to Frost at this point. And I mean, that could be for a ton of reasons, but I think you got to get him back in here soon, or else, like, you got to trade him. That's my opinion.
But like, don't you think it's kind of crazy that you trade a guy because you want to hold Delorier in the lineup? And I like Delorier, but again, he's on a no trade clause. He's gonna be here, and he's a tough guy for this team. Those are the type of guys you rotate in and out of the lineup depending on your opponent.
Well, my thing is it's not trading him for the Flyers. It's just more for him. Like he eventually is going to say, fucking trade me because I'm not playing at all. So get rid of me. Like do something for me here. He has no leverage, but I mean, like that's what his mentality will eventually be down the line. He's going to say to his agent, well, I haven't played for 15 games straight. You know, like what's happening, right? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
You got to be realistic. So,
but you know what? I'll be honest. I don't see Torts as being unfair. And he even made a comment about Frost, how like, hey,
he
Frost,
needs to get him back in.
Yeah, like he knows it himself, right? So let's hope that it doesn't continue and that he gets Frost in. He's going to be heavily motivated. They just played a really tough game against Vegas. It does make sense to give somebody a night off.
We just outlined the worst case scenario, basically, like what would happen potentially if it doesn't go the way of getting Frost back into some games and then he cements himself here. But I do expect after a loss, like they're going to switch the lineup up. Just due to the fact that Tortorella mentioned himself, like he needs to find a way to get Frost back in. I think he will do that in some shape or form. Who knows who it will come of the expense of here, but I mean we'll see. Obviously, today as things get announced. But.
Yeah, and then they have a much easier game over the weekend on a 1:00 game against Anaheim. So it'll be interesting. We'll see what they do, but something's got to give. And then I do want to just talk about Andre. We did talk about the injury situation. He is playing a lot less. I do think he'd be rotated out of the lineup, but again, they don't really have a better option. He did have that really nice play where he kind of took away the pass laying down for a 2-on-1 against
Yeah,
Vegas.
that was really
So
good.
the guy's got flashes still. I don't think he was really ready. He's not again, he's the youngest defenseman on the team right now. And they are using him kind of
But
sparingly. He's also undersized, but they don't have another option really, or at least
yeah, I mean, I think
maybe
they'll
Yinning.
continue. I think they'll continue. Well, I was going to bring that up. I think they'll continue to play him because I think Tortorella just really likes like his skill set and the positives that he can bring when he's executing what they want, like when he's moving the puck quickly, when he's making those smart decisions, and he isn't kind of like putting the puck into areas that can get the team in trouble. Obviously, we've seen the opposite side of that, where when he's getting forechecked really heavily against big bodies, he can be pressured to put the puck in areas where you might not want to see it. And you kind of saw
Right.
that in Dallas. But you did see him improve against Vegas, who was a similar team to Dallas in terms of the way they forecheck and just the heaviness in their game. So you're seeing a steady improvement. He's a rookie. You got to factor that in. Like, he's still not comfortable in this league. And it's the same thing that we kind of mentioned earlier with him and Zamula. Like, they're both, I don't think, they're both still finding their footing here. And he's finding his footing even more because he hasn't played in North America other than like 5, 6, 7 games to the Phantoms last year. So he's really, getting a trial by fire. So I would imagine, though, as it kind of goes along for Andre, that he's going to keep improving. I think last game you saw him make a real good defensive play on that 2-on-1, as you said. And I think he had some really nice kind of escapes and outlets. Even Zamula too, like this, like I kind of said he had two bad plays earlier when we went through the game recap, but he also had a pretty good entry where he went around a guy with a toe drag of his own and really outlet it nicely up the ice. So even though there's negatives with some of the young guys, there's always going to be positives as well. I'd imagine it's going to be continue to be Andre in that role, until Ristolainen gets back, and then we'll probably see him get sent down. But you never know what's going to happen, right? Like the defense is lacking some physicality. So, like you said, and I like what you mentioned there because I was going to bring it up too. Is one switch I could see them making. Let's say if they want to get Andre more seasoning, playing all situations, 20 minutes a night, things like that. Because right now he's getting like what 13, 12, 14, like around that kind of
Yeah.
range in all the games. Maybe they will get Yinning in because he does bring more of a physical element. But who knows, right? I'd imagine. I think they want Andre to learn, especially if there's an opportunity where there are injuries. Why not have him learn on the fly here? So I would be surprised if it isn't him, but maybe Jennings an option. But I think we'll continue to see him improve just because he's really learning on the fly because he's played, with the larger ice surface the majority of his life versus the North American ice surface, and that changes up your whole game just in terms of angles, how you rim the puck out on the boards, the types of passes that you can make across the ice because there's more room out wide versus, in the North American rinks, it's more north-south versus the east-west game. So I think there's just a lot for him to kind of learn. And we'll see him improve as it goes along. But I'm interested to watch him game to game and just see if he does have that progression, right?
Yeah, I think he will. But you think about Cam York and his start under Tortorella, right? He did benefit from playing in the AHL, and Andre didn't get any of that luxury. So,
Yeah.
but we'll see what happens. For now, I don't think they have a better option. So, all right. Just want to remind everybody to like and subscribe. Again, hit the like button, hit the subscribe button, hit the bell for excuse me, for notifications. All of that is a humongous help to us. And let's get into our final two segments here of the podcast. We'll talk about the Phantoms here and give some prospect updates as well. So the Phantoms themselves are having kind of an up and down season so far. First thing, some good news. Ule Lichel is back to his old ways. Right now, he had a 5-goal weekend where he had 5 goals over the weekend, a hat trick, and then 2 goals and a goal in each other game. He is catching fire. He did lead, I believe he led the Phantoms in points last year with just about a point per game. So he's getting right back to his old ways. I don't know if that's going to ever translate to the NHL, but he's still relatively young. He's definitely showing that the AHL is a league that he can be a high-end player in, and just getting the hat trick, huge moment for him. And I do expect, we might see Lixell if there's more injuries. He might be one of the first call-ups. We don't necessarily think about that. But I guess I'll mix it in with this next one, and then you can comment on both, Vasili. Wade Allison has done almost nothing, has been reverted to the fourth line, and it was even brought up by Lappy that, that Allison really hasn't had the right attitude in the minors. It seems like he's kind of having trouble adjusting with the fact that he's not playing in the NHL this year, where that's not really going to help you. You need to show, just like Frost is going to have to rebound from being benched. Like, you have to show that you are mentally tough at the pro level, and you have to show that you can take it in stride, like Tanner Laczynski is, that has 7 points in 5 games. And, we already know he's a great player at the AHL level. Laczynski has had the right attitude, and he's playing top line center. He's playing with Lixell, and it really should be Wade Allison on the top line there with them. But now he's taken off the power play and on the fourth line, and he's going to have to work his way right back up the lineup. And, I do believe in Wade Allison. I do believe he can get himself out of it, but it's upsetting to hear. What do you think about that whole slew?
Yeah, I mean, for Lixell, obviously you can't ask for more. 5 goals in 3 games and then a hat trick. I mean,
5-5.
he's yeah. I meant
Total.
five.
I'm sorry.
Yeah.
My
Five
bad.
goals in
My
three
bad.
games over the weekend there.
My bad.
So that's really good output. And I mean, he's like you said, right? He's playing the same way he was last season, doing the things that are making him
Yeah.
successful, and he's continuing. So that's obviously something that the Flyers love to see from a guy that could be a call-up option for them down the line, if there's some sort of injury on the wing, especially. I think definitely I wouldn't be surprised to see him, because he got called up by the Tortorella staff in the past, and they used him. So
Not used
he's a
much.
guy. Yeah, not used much, but I think they believe that they could trust him in the way he plays, at least on the
Yes.
defensive side of the puck.
Swedish guy.
Yeah, exactly. Swedish player, usually making the safe plays out there. I don't know, like you said, if he's ever going to be, the same type of scoring threat at the NHL level. I think maybe he tops out to be like a third line type of guy who can bring you some energy, some quickness, and some scoring punch. But you need guys to score on your AHL affiliate, and he's obviously a top line producer at that level. So that's great for the Phantoms and great for them to make a playoff push down the road as the season elapses. For Allison, obviously disappointing news. I mean, you want to see a guy go down and have the same mindset that the Tanner Laczynski had, where, hey, you set me down, but I'm going to prove that you made a mistake by doing so, and that you should have kept me up, and put up points and play the best that they can while being in the AHL. And that's obviously Allison kind of done the opposite of what Laczynski's doing. I think he's taking it really hard. He probably thinks that he shouldn't have been sent down, but acting in that manner isn't going to do anything for him. It's probably going to detriment him more, and he's probably going to, if he keeps doing what he's doing, it's going to probably push him out of the first call-up option. I would have thought him being sent down, if somebody gets injured, he would be the first option. At this point, it's probably either Lixell or Laczynski versus Allison. I don't think he's even in the conversation, because you don't want a guy who's not, on the same page as the team and the culture they're trying to build. He's actively going against, the play hard, no matter what happens, we're giving maximum effort type of culture that they're looking for. So, that's unfortunate, and you have to hope that he gets back to what allowed him to make the NHL in the first place. But this could be a motivating factor for him too. I mean, LaPerriere, what he's doing, it's calculated, right? He's making those comments 100%. To the media for a reason, because he knows Allison's going to hear it. He's basically calling him out, saying, "Hey, we know that you could be a point per game guy at this level, so why aren't we saying that?"
Yeah,
right?
Especially at the AHL level, and they need him. Like, it's not like they won all the games, right? Like, Cooper Maruti is playing well on that top line, but I think they'd much rather have Wade Allison there than
exactly.
Maruti. It would be a great. He had success playing with Tanner Laczynski in the past. It's like you expect those guys to
have chemistry, so you would expect that they would play well together.
And they're friends. And even Laczynski said like that he talked to Allison how you just have to have a positive mindset and just be here.
Well, it's really all you can do for your career. Like, if he continues in the spiral, he's never going to make it back to the NHL. It just is what it is. And it's not even the fact that, another team won't give him a shot or whatever, but no team wants a player who's going to have a bad attitude and isn't going to be invested and giving their maximum effort. You don't think other teams are seeing how he's playing and saying, well, we wouldn't want that guy around our team?
Apparently, Briere also said that he tried to trade Allison and nobody bit. Like, nobody wanted to trade for him either. So
that also speaks volumes.
Yeah, you got to just start over, dude. Like, that's really has to be your mindset is, okay, well, then I'll build right back up to where I was and become that player that did have interest around the league and
did have value. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, you went through waivers unclaimed. There were trade offers made for to move you out of town to give you an NHL future, and nobody wanted it. So you have to look at yourself and be like, okay, well, what can I do differently because he has the skill set, right? He has all the skill and he has the physicality for it. I believed in him, so it's a mental thing for him. So he's got to bounce right back up. There's a lot of good players on this Phantoms team. So, he can't expect to be given anything.
Yeah.
So let's talk about the final two AHL guys here. Two that have been very interesting. I'm actually going to switch these up on us because we did talk about first call ups, and this is the guy who I think at wing for sure would be probably the first call up at the AHL level. Samu Tuomala has 1 goal, 3 assists, a +1, 4 points in 5 games as a rookie at the AHL level right now. Talk about a turnaround. I mean, this kid is looking good. He skates awesome. I love the way he moves on the ice.
So fast. Yeah.
And obviously Tortorella liked him because he stuck around longer than anybody expected. I really like what I'm seeing with Tuomala, and looks like, I don't know what he's going to actually end up in the in the NHL. He looks like an NHL talent at this point. I don't know if he's ever going to be a top 6 forward type of guy, but a scoring third line player, I definitely think is in his future.
I think like if everything were to work out,
he's only 20.
If everything were to work out exactly perfect for him, like I think he could be a top 6 option in terms of just the second liner. That would be his ceiling. But I think it's more realistic that he would be like your
Middle
speedy, speedy third line guy, really quick, really nice shot, maybe get some power play time. What I did like from him that I saw in the preseason, I really liked his retrievals in the power play, and he would slow it down on the power play too, and kind of find those seams for passing plays. I mean,
that's something edges.
That's something this power play is actually missing, to be honest. Somebody that can do things like that. Not to say that he would be able to do it
with a retriever. I like the way you put that. He's right. You're absolutely right. Sorry.
With his speed too, and that helps on your entries. You can dump it in. He's so quick. He can get the puck back for you. So I think that's something that Tortorella definitely liked. And he was retrieving those pucks against guys that were a lot bigger than him and older than him. So you have to factor in, like, once he gets older, puts on more size, he's going to be even more effective there. But I think Tuomala, like, his speed is the most intriguing thing. Like, that's a huge factor in the NHL, being a speedy team. Most teams that are successful have speed within their lineup. I think even this season, you can see the Flyers are playing a lot better. What's a big factor of that? They look quicker. They're playing faster. Playing with speed, huge asset. So I think a player like him, definitely beneficial. I think we'll see him get a couple games this year. Like, there's always injuries. I mean, if everybody stays healthy, obviously not, but I think there'll be injuries. There always is. And he might be a guy that gets opportunity, especially if he continues to produce at almost a point per game. And he has a skill set that obviously the Flyers like. And I mean, being a second round pick, I'm sure he'll get an opportunity at some point down the line here.
Yeah, really well said. I love the way you broke down Tuomala, and I think you're spot on there. He's going to be like a little bit of a project for a little bit. I don't, it's not like I expect everything from him this year, but definitely next year I could see him, fighting for pushing for an NHL spot, maybe even by the end of the year, depending on where the Flyers are in the lineup. Again, if the Flyers end up kind of a little further out of the playoffs, they'll look to move on from some players. I don't think they're going to trade Cam Atkinson, but I could see them, moving on from some players or trying to get some more young guys in the lineup. Garrett Hathaway is a guy they brought in here for 2 years. He might not be here all next year. So that's a guy who, I could see him playing on the fourth line to start his career. Just the way he's playing. I don't think they're going to rush to do that with him. Again, he's only 20 years old. They're going to give him serious AHL time, but I wouldn't be shocked if he's the top right winger at some point for the Phantoms, whether it be end of this year or, next year. I really like what I've seen from him. And, it makes him not a bust of a pick, which
you gotta just
think worried about.
I mean, young guys, right? There's always struggles. You gotta just think about the progression. Like, he wasn't even putting up points in like the Finnish junior league, and now he's almost a point a game in the AHL. So it just shows like some guys, they go through struggles and they come out on the other side. It's not always a negative thing when those struggles do happen. Sometimes it's a learning experience. So
agreed. And speaking of another guy who's catching attention, and we brought this up, as this is a guy that has like top 6 upside or bust probably. But Alexis Gendron, again, a goal scoring machine at the juniors level, and he has 2 goals in 3 games with the Phantoms so far
It's
this
pretty
year.
good, yeah.
That's pretty damn good. Go
I think
ahead,
they're trying to limit him a bit, just in terms of like
because he's
he's
his
a
age.
yeah, he's a rookie, so I don't think they're going to put him in every game this season. And I think the Phantoms do they have a bit of a bloated roster. Like when we went over the depth chart, we saw like there's certain guys like where are they going to play. So I think there's a bit of a rotation probably that's going to happen,
Yeah,
and
for
maybe
sure.
certain games they might get drawn in against like a weaker team physically or something, just due to his age, due to his size.
Yep.
But you can't deny that. I mean, I think his shot, to be honest, is already NHL ready. Like he has a
Yeah.
rip of a
Yeah. Yeah.
shot. He can hammer it. Like it's just, are the other pieces of his game going to come to the point where he can actually be
Right.
an effective guy at the NHL? That's going to be, skating, putting the size on, being able to not be a liability off the puck. I think his skating's already pretty decent. Like I think it's more the defensive aspects, and that's probably what LaPerriere and the staff are going to work with
Yeah.
him on, obviously. But
He's a guy I could see even getting some ECHL time this year, just off the sheer fact that he's still 19 years old.
yeah,
He's not the biggest frame at this point.
and you want him to play every game if you can, which
Yeah.
might not happen with the Phantoms just due to like the bigger roster.
And at
So
the ECHL level, I mean, he'd probably be a superstar down there, at least goal
probably
scoring
score a
wise.
goal a game down there. He's
Yeah.
almost doing it at the AHL level anyway. So
Yeah. But really, really encouraging stuff from
for seventh
Gendron.
round pick,
Yeah,
like
dude. Really, really great stuff. And I want to see more from it. Obviously, the Phantoms have only played 5 games so far, so it's still very early. They're still kind of figuring out their lineup. So, but I think LaPerriere is doing a good job kind of mixing people in. And we'll see, we'll see what happens with Allison because he has no points in those 5 games. He is a +1, but
it's
that's
not
not good. That's
saying
not good
much.
enough.
Yeah,
Yeah, it's not good enough for a guy who's supposed to be in the NHL. Now, I do want to mention one more thing. Elliot Denoyer does have 3 points in 5 games. He's a +3 in
pretty
those
good.
games, and he's got 1 fight. So he's kind of picking up where he last left off. I expect him to get better and better. I think he was a little disappointed too, as I think he thought he had an NHL chance. And, I think we mentioned at one point
Yeah,
that Tortorella might have had a phone call conversation with him, but it's a pretty deep lineup right now for the Flyers. Yeah, they don't have like superstars there yet, but remember, Cutter Gauthier is joining either the Phantoms or the Flyers at the end of this year.
well,
And that's one less roster spot for every single one of
yeah.
these guys.
I mean, I think Denoyer could be an option for them, but it just depends on who gets hurt. Like if
Yeah,
it's Paling that goes down, I could totally see them bring him up if
yes,
he plays well.
I totally
Or
agree.
Lisinski for that matter, like to
Or
run a
does
fourth
Scott
line.
Lawton play the fourth line center role and
Yeah,
then Frost, moves
comes
into the
in.
top 9 again, so
Yeah, who knows? There's a lot of
they got the
factors at
depth.
play.
Yeah, they got
Yeah,
the depth right now, so it's not the end of the world. But we'll see. Maybe Morgan Frost gets moved for a defenseman. I mean, this team is obviously a little short on young defensemen, and Frost has value. So, but again, not if he's not playing. You have no leverage to trade him if he's not
yeah.
playing. All right, let's get into our final segment here with the prospect updates. Only going to go through 5 players, really, but just the ones I really want to talk about. But do you want to talk about the first one, Massimo Rizzo? I just want to point out that, this kid is hunting for a contract, and in 4 games, he has 10 points,
Yeah.
2 goals, and 8 assists. He started
What?
off even hotter.
What's his age, Yariv?
I think he's 22, 21. Let me double check.
Okay.
He's 22 years old. So
Okay,
again,
so he's not like a 24, 25-year-old or anything,
no,
which
no,
sometimes you see happen in college, a
he was
real
the
big
Bobby,
overager.
but I think he was same draft as Bobby Brink.
Okay, okay. So that's
And
good. That's good points for his age, for sure.
I mean, yeah, he's obviously too good for the NCAA with those kind of numbers at 2.5 points a game. But he's searching for a contract. That's a really good way of doing it. I just want to point it out here. I don't know what he's going to end up being,
There's
but if he
obviously a
keeps
reason they
doing this,
targeted him, right?
yeah, if he continues doing this, I don't see how he doesn't get an ELC with those kind of numbers. Those aren't like a point per game at 22 years old. That is like dominant. I don't know if he's gonna be able to keep it up, but again, so far so good for him. And he's looking good,
Yeah,
at least on
definitely.
paper. The other 2 are just Barkey and Bonk. Again, they are just continuing what they've been doing. Oh, my browser froze here. Why did it freeze? So Bonk still with 10 assists in 11 games. He's a +3 on the year, so pretty damn good right now for him. Still not getting on the scoring department. I think that that'll probably come with age. But definitely putting up a lot of assists, a big part of his game. And then Denver Barkey, he's got 15 points in 11 games. Very impressive, a 1.36 point per game. And then just to rattle off a few more, and then we'll talk about the big two names. Ryan McPherson in the BCHL, he's got 7 goals, 9 assists, 16 points in 12 games for 1.33 point per game. Very good for the BCHL. Again, a lower league, but still important to point out. I'll skip Michkov for now. Alex Ciernik, he's still doing really well. He's got 4 goals, 3 assists, 7 points in 10 games for a 0.7. Carter, 0.7 point per game. Carter Sotheran, again, another draft pick for the Flyers. He's got 3 goals, 3 assists, 6 points in 7 games for the Portland Winterhawks as a defenseman. That's pretty damn good start. Who else we got here? Alex Bump for Western Michigan. He's got 2 assists in 4 games. Pretty good. We know he's transitioning to the NCAA right now. I expect those numbers to go up as the season goes on. Hunter McDonald has only played 1 game so far. He still only has the 1 assist in 1 game. But he was a +3 in that 1 game too. So also very impressive. Ty Murchison has got 1 assist for Arizona State in 4 games. That's okay. Who else we got? J.R. Avon, we should also mention, has been reactivated. Played his first game for the Lehigh Valley Phantoms. He's coming back from a pretty serious injury, so that will probably take a little bit for him to get going. Mateo Mann, I'm not that hyped on this guy. He'll be a long-term project no matter what. He's only a -1 with no points.
It's really the size is why they drafted him. He's just
Yeah,
a real big guy.
For the most part. Owen McLaughlin, he's got no points in 4 games, a +1. And Cole Knuble, this is actually a really surprising one. He's got no points
right? Yeah.
For University of Notre Dame and a -4. And to go from their best player to this, I'm a little confused.
He played really well last season.
Yeah, I'm a little confused by it.
Could just be a cold spell, right? To start off.
Yeah, it could be a cold spell, but it's definitely strange. And then Alexei Kolosov in 13 games, he's got a 2.07 goals against with a .918 save percentage. Again, his numbers are starting to become a little more realistic, but still fantastic numbers for a 20-year-old goaltender in the KHL as a starter. Just really, really good stuff. Zavragin, his numbers are still really strong. And then MHL in 6 games, he's got a 1.46 goals against and a .951 save percentage. Fantastic. And then the VHL in 3 games, he's got a 1.64 goals against and a .940 goal save percentage. Absolutely fantastic. Carson Bjarnason, we already know that his numbers have never been great at the WHL. His team is not very good. He's got a 3.29 goals against average, but a .903 save percentage, which is not bad at all for a team that's putting up that many goals. Goals against. It tells you the story behind that, that he really is stopping a lot of shots there, and he's getting peppered on a regular basis. And I do want to bring up the Cal Peterson in 3 games has a 4.01 goals against average with a .881 save percentage. Cal Peterson, you are a buyout candidate for sure next season.
Well, and that's in the AHL too, and it's not like the Phantoms even have like a real bad defense in the AHL. They have actually a pretty strong defense, looking at the depth. So I don't know. I just seeing his stats for LA's affiliate, I think it's the Ontario Reign last season.
It's very similar.
It didn't inspire a lot of confidence that he was going to come here and be a whole different goalie.
Flyers traded for Cal Peterson, and Carter Hart's going to be traded.
I'm sure that's going to happen. But yeah, I mean, just to finish off on the prospect roundup, I mean, it's obviously a good thing that you see so many Flyers prospects, other than a few that we mentioned, just having positive impacts to start the season so far. And one last thing to mention before we kind of finish off.
We got the 2 players left to talk about.
Oh, yeah, we got Gauthier and Michkov. Well, we can get into Michkov. I was going to say that he's named an KHL All-Star. So that's obviously a really cool thing for him. And I mean, based off his play, it's not really surprising to me at all. So
I had a tweet by Steve Kornianos and I couldn't find it. I kept looking at my phone in the beginning of the podcast. I'm like, where the hell is this goddamn tweet? But he was talking about Michkov, who right now still stands because it's the All-Star break there. But he still has 7 goals, 7 assists in the 14
points, yeah.
In 14 points playing for HK Sochi. So still a point per game. And he was just like, essentially, I like kind of remembered off the top of my head a little bit, but he's like, if you take a guy that
I have
high,
the tweet actually.
You do?
You want me to read it? Yeah,
yeah,
I found
please,
it.
please.
So come on, let's be honest. If your own team's draft plus 1 prospect was averaging half a point a game in the KHL, you'd be doing cartwheels while anointing him as the future face of the organization. Michkov is on his 2nd consecutive season of unprecedented KHL production. So that's a quote tweet on the KHL tweeting that Michkov has 5 goals and 9 points in his past 8 games. So yeah.
So
just shows the production that he's at is something that you've never really seen in that league before, right? A point a game pace for his age.
It's unprecedented. And if you look at Connor Bedard right now, he's got 4 points, 2 goals, 2 assists in 7 games. Again, not bad at all. For
he got fucked last game, man, by the refs. Like he scored a really nice goal against Boston, and then like they were in the zone for so long before like they called it back for offside. They really got to change that rule. Like where I think Ray Ferraro mentioned something being like, if you're in the zone and you haven't scored after 10 seconds of entering, even if you were offside, it shouldn't matter. You should just count it.
Yeah.
Especially by an inch. Like, who cares?
The whole problem with there, though, is that they've already called so many the other way that it's like how many guys have lost points there. And I don't want to make exceptions for Bedard just because people want to see him score more. But again, that's a pretty good start. I expect his numbers to go up as the season goes on. He's still adjusting to the NHL. But when we do get Michkov, he's not going to be an 18-year-old kid coming to the NHL. That's why actually I don't have a problem with him not being here right now. Let him go to the... Yeah, like I did see a tweet that was like comparing Michkov and Bedard's numbers, and it's like you can't do that. The KHL is not the NHL.
Yeah.
It's the second best league in the world and not the best league.
I think whoever tweeted that said it was tongue in cheek, but I don't know.
Oh, fair enough. Okay, fair enough.
Yeah.
I'm not going to rip on the person. I don't care, but it's something to keep in mind. Bedard, like if Michkov was here, he wouldn't be putting up a point per game pace in the NHL, not at 18. But the fact he's doing that in the KHL, Bedard would be doing something similar. And I don't think it's that crazy to imagine a future where Matvei Michkov outscores Bedard in the NHL.
It could happen.
That's a crazy
like I said, right before all the politicizing of Russia kind of happened and all this stuff with the Russian players, they were thought of as almost equals, right? Just based off their performances against each other. And then it completely flipped around after that. And you didn't get to see them face off against one another in the World Juniors. And I think that has a huge factor. Like if you saw them face off and then Michkov outscores them in the World Juniors, then does he ever drop to 7? Yeah, right. That's definitely not happening, right? So, that plays a factor. I think one thing too that you have to note is Bedard's coming from a junior league to the NHL, no experience really ever against playing against men. Whereas Michkov is going to have 2 to 3 seasons almost under his belt playing against men in the KHL. So he might be more adapted just to playing, against men, playing at a higher level, coming into the NHL versus what Bedard was. So there might be less of a kind of transition there, right?
Yeah, no, absolutely. That's also why I'm excited about Cutter Gauthier, who, not like what we did with Nolan Patrick, where we brought, again, still a mistake to bring in a kid recovering from it. I think about it today, being older and a little bit wiser.
Played in the AHL.
Yeah.
Or back to junior.
Or back to juniors. He's recovering from an injury. And I get why the surgeon, I've said it here on the podcast, the surgeon was here in Philly. They wanted to keep an eye on him. But again, put the kid in a position to succeed.
But you could have him get surgery wherever you wanted, and you could have him fly in every couple months to get checkups.
The world expert on that specific surgery was here in Philadelphia in the Navy Yard. So that's why they picked Philly.
Which is fair.
That. Yeah, again, we have UPenn Hospital and whatnot here, but
great facility.
You could have sent him back. You could have hired a specific person to watch him. Again, all hearsay, at this point, but it's really it's going to be great that Cutter Gauthier is coming in here as a 20-year-old, right?
Yeah,
He's gonna be joining the
more
team at the end of the
experience.
season as a 20-year-old after already playing against men in World Juniors and having success. Like, you want a guy to come in on that type of way.
I'm
You
real
know,
interested to see what he does in the World Juniors this year.
exactly. Exactly. And speaking of Cutter Gauthier, so he still has 3 goals, 1 assist, 4 points in 4 games. Again, anything point per game at the NCAA level is very good. I expect his production to increase, but apparently in game 4, he had 19 shot attempts.
Which is nuts.
I can't even imagine that. 19 shot attempts.
Yeah, that's a lot.
That's coming from Bill Meltzer. That's crazy. That's like, talk about, he is playing center. They want to play him at center. Maybe he won't play center at the NHL level. We don't know yet. But that does scream goal scorer. Bill Meltzer said projects him to be like a 35, potentially 40 goal scorer in the NHL. Maybe. I think he projects to be a 40 goal scorer, and I think Mitchkov projects to be a 50 goal scorer in the NHL. And
If he
you talk
shoots at that volume, right? Like where he's taking that many
that's
shots a game, that's like almost Ovechkin levels of taking
that
shots. So,
exactly. And
um,
the Flyers really need a guy like that who will shoot from anywhere, and his goals are like lights out
well,
shots
I'm
too.
just thinking like, I mean, Forster hasn't really shown yet at this level that he's going to be willing to shoot it a ton yet, but he's also getting kind of acclimated to being a full-time NHL
Yeah,
guy. Like at the AHL level, he shot it a ton. Like, so imagine you have a roster down the line where you have Forster shoots a lot. You have Tippett, who, I mean, usually does
I
shoot
think
a
he had
lot. Like,
9 shot attempts the last game or something like that.
yeah, like Tippett's usually hovering between like 7 to like 10 or 12. Like he's usually shooting at a pretty high volume. And then you have Gauthier doing the same thing. I mean, that's
And
tough for teams to
TK
defend against. Yeah.
and TK
So
still with the team. He's a
bright
shooter.
future, right? When you have these types of skill sets kind of combined there. But
Just need to fill out that D. That's it. I see people keep saying 4 or 5 years away. I don't know. I don't see that.
well, I
I
mean, I don't. You never know what's going to open up. I personally think with the defense, it's always hard to develop your own guys. So I think with the
They
two
might
first
trade
rounders,
for a
well, that's
veteran.
what I was going to say. I think with the two first rounders, like they're definitely going to select one guy's going to be a defender. Could be both. Who really knows where
Yeah,
they fall? Just
we'll
the
see.
draft
Yeah,
positioning and the rankings and who's available
they might
where.
be like back-to-back picks at this
Yeah,
point.
yeah, yeah. Who really knows? But I think definitely, like they could trade for a defenseman 100%. I think that's something that they're kind of stocking up on assets, and you might see them make a big move like that, this offseason coming up when somebody
Look at what
becomes
New Jersey did
available.
with Dougie Hamilton. I'm not saying we have
Exactly.
to go out and get a Dougie
But
Hamilton.
then once you add a guy like that, that's the next year you really take a big step just due to, having
Yeah,
that bona
you,
fide top pair.
you
So
don't know where teams will be stuck with cap wise, and the Flyers are clearing out cap space. Like they might be able to catch a team in a position where they have to clear up cap space, and they're able to grab a guy like a Travis Sanheim who's better offensively, or a Torrey Krug, younger version of Torrey
mhm.
Krug, right? A guy who can play a top pairing role. Who knows what they'll need by then? We don't really know. Like, I will say this about Cam York. I don't, people keep naming him like a number 3 defenseman or all that. I don't see that. I see a guy who, and that's the one thing I will give credit to Buchagras, Will, on, is that Cam York is a potential elite talent in this league. Like, people keep
Yeah.
trying to put a cap on him. Like, he's never going to be that guy. And I don't see that. I see a
I
guy who
just
has it all. He just has to put it all together. He doesn't project to be a true number 1 in the league. I don't even really know what that is anymore because there aren't enough of them to even go around.
It's like a
But
Makar or Hedman,
right,
stuff like
okay, but
that.
there's like 10 of them in the
That's what I
league.
mean, right?
Yeah,
Exactly.
it's like, okay, so we don't have the best defenseman in
Well,
the league.
I
Okay.
mean, if he can be a top pair guy, which I think he's inching towards at this point,
Yeah,
just
of
based off his
course.
play, he's
He's only
showing he can be a top.
22.
That's what I mean. He's showing he can be a top pair guy. Obviously, he's playing at top lines of the Oilers, of Dallas, of Vegas, and he's holding his own most of the time. Other than that one gaff, which is going to happen with a young defenseman all the time. So, like, he's showing he can hold his own. I just want to see. I think there's more though. Like, I think there's more, and they're trying to bring it out of him. I want to see him just kind of take more control offensively. I think there's more to his offensive game in terms
Yeah,
of like
I think
contributing there.
that's why I
I
want to
think the
see him on the
team's
top power
I think
play.
the team's trying to unlock it. And to your point, that's exactly what I was going to say is like to do that, you give him those top power play reps, see what he can create there, with
And
more
I
time
think
and
that
space. So
that's really what I would switch is I would put Tippett on the top power play and I would put York on the top power play and I would swap it out with Sanheim. And I don't know. I don't want to say Atkinson because I don't think he necessarily
I would
deserves
take him
that.
off, to
But
be
I would
honest.
try Atkinson on that. Or I don't want to do this with Brink because he's played so well. But again, with you look at the combination of Kate and Farabee,
It
why
makes
not try to
sense, yeah.
why not try to put Brink with them? I understand why he's there, but again, you got to balance that power play a little bit more.
Though I would want to see kind of Brink and Tippett and what they could do on each other's offsides,
Yeah,
maybe.
that's
That'd be
also
interesting.
yeah. I feel you. I feel you on that. I just want to see them improve the power play. I'm open to everything. I really am. I'm open to them keeping it the way they
But
are,
you
but
got to change something up, I
I
think.
need to see success, and
At
I
least
haven't seen that.
philosophy wise in what they're
Right
doing.
now, the second unit looks better than the first, and that shouldn't be the
Yeah.
case with the names out there. So,
Yeah.
all right, dude. Another long episode from us. Anything you want to tell our audience before we head out?
So tonight will be the Minnesota game as you're all listening. My goal is over the weekend I think it'll be the seventh game. So now is about the time where I think I want to address like how the team's playing, kind of look at the trends so far. So I should have an article over the weekend, just kind of looking into that, and
Dope.
then also looking into maybe writing a feature about Sean Couture and just his return and how he hasn't really missed a beat so far in a lot of his games. So I kind of want to write something on that. So hopefully you'll get two articles from me this weekend. We'll see what happens, but definitely the one about the recap on the team for sure.
Awesome. Love it, dude. Love it. All right, everybody. Again, I want to remind everybody to please like, subscribe, share, hit the bell for notifications. Again, you'll probably, if you're listening early, you'll be listening to this on Wednesday night. Thursday will be game time against Minnesota. Super pumped for this game. I'm loving watching this team this year. They
A
really
lot more
only.
fun in terms of the
Oh
gameplay.
my! I
So.
just love the way they're playing, dude. I love it. I missed this type of team. It's been a long time, and I love what Tortorella has done to the culture of this team. You know, people can call him a dinosaur, you can call him whatever you want. I just say he's absolutely right.
The team's
Uh,
buying in, so
yeah,
he's doing something.
he's not gonna. I'm not gonna agree with him on 100% of the things he does. Nobody will, but so far so good. And he's already taken us, like you see the announcers, especially during that Vegas game, and Mark Messier, like even kind of gave a nod to the Flyers. He's like, I can see the Flyers winning this game. And people were, PK was a little like shocked. And I'm like, but that's the way you play to win. Like people keep talking about like dipsy doodle and dangles and all that shit. It's like, yeah, that stuff is great. You need guys who could do that, but that's not how you win. One, that's not how you win a cup.
How you win the playoffs, yeah.
That's definitely not how you win in the playoffs. You have to have the foundation down. Then you can allow players to go out, and you'll see more of that. If this team keeps playing like this, you will see more of the dips and the dangles, and you will see that stuff come out as they get the foundation part right. Other players, they'll be able to take risks. They'll know the team behind them. And we haven't even seen Owen Tippett unleashed. You're seeing like little flashes of it. He did it even a little bit at the end of the game versus Vegas, but it's happening. It's happening. And I love it. All right. Thank you, everybody, for listening. You guys are amazing. Please keep the comments going. Your support has been amazing. Now that the Phillies are done, we expect people to start ratcheting up on the Flyers a little bit more. The Eagles are still going, the Sixers, but we're kind of transitioning into that fall weather now. So it's hockey season officially. And I am so happy about it. Excuse me. Yeah, we love you guys. And remember, always stay British.